Cale Pocock, Ray Bracey on the front row, two of the more, just as far as elite goes, more inexperienced drivers in the field. And then you've got some veterans, some multi-time champions starting way back in the 30s, in the 40s even. Obviously, we saw the runs during the duels that this package can produce. Those drivers will move forwards and backwards and forwards and backwards all night long, but it's definitely something to keep an eye on early on in this race.
With you there. And with that, I think we can officially send it over to the national anthem where we'll kick off our pre race festivities. Now for the pre race command from Belly Up Sports.
This is Vince Stover with the Belly Up Fantasy Live baseball show from the Belly Up Sports Network. Racers, start your engines.
All right. And now we'll go through our starting lineup and we'll take our time with this one since it's our first starting grid of the 2025 A Cup Series season. On the pole for 4D Racewear as 4D Racewear's pole award is given to the fastest qualifier for every race, and that went to Cale Pocock last week, driving the 60 Toyota for Abbott Motorsports.
And starting on the outside of the front row after qualifying second 1 week ago, preparing for his first full-time season here in the Belly of Sports Cup Series, it's Ray Bracey.
Starting third and Duel 1 winner Scott Crump in the number 90 for Lake Norman Motorsports, also our defending race winner from Richmond last season.
Of course, a second dual winner, Jake Scarborough, number 77 Redux Racing Toyota, rolls off fourth.
Starting fifth will be Blake Reynolds, a rookie who finished second in duel number 2, an open driver that raced his way into the field this season.
Starting sixth, former winner of this race, 2021B, Johnny Thomas, looking for a second Daytona 500 victory.
Starting seventh in the number 22 Shifty Sports Toyota with a new manufacturer change for that team, Josh Adams leading the way as a new driver there with that group.
Another former Daytona 500 winner starting in the 8th position. 3 of his 7 Cup Series wins have come in full distance events. It's car 48, Nick Massey.
Starting ninth, the defending winner of the Daytona 500 for the Elite Belly Up Sports Cup Series. That is Ethan Burrell in the number 37 Pro Edge Toyota.
2023 B Truck Series champion here in the Elite Racing Leagues, driving the number 5 EPI Chevrolet for Fueled Up Racing. It's Jonathan Cutlett.
Starting 11th will be the most dominant driver of the season last year, but ultimately falling short, was the Lake Norman Motorsports driver Ethan Stanley in car 91.
And lined up behind his Fueled Up Racing teammate in the 12th position, last season's Atlanta winner, it's Justin Vandermarl.
Starting 13th, another one of those Shift Esports Toyotas. It's Nick and Delicato for 3-wide TV in the 10 car.
You can call him Pork Chop. You can call him Ka-Chow. You can even call him a former Daytona winner in the Truck Series. Corey Abbott is starting 14th.
One of the most aggressive drivers and a new face on a new team. It's Chris Wright, starting in 15th spot in the number 9 car for South Shore Racing.
Your reigning and defending Belly Up Sports Cup Series champion. The title defense starts tonight from the 16th position for Justin Wadsworth.
Starting 17th, former Elite Cup Series Daytona winner. It's Jesse Racines driving the number 70 Chevrolet for Do Good Motorsports and starting 17th.
Another Do Good Motorsports entry. He's been here since day one. He finished 6th in the inaugural Daytona 500. Starting 18th is Michael Goodman.
Another new face in a new place. Trey Holmes starts 19th for Pro Edge Racing in car number 23.
A two-time winner in the Rev Limit Workshop Series representing Canada, car 24, Rebelist Photography Toyota for Covered Bridge Racing. It's Michael Hossack.
Michael Goodman affectionately refers to Ty McIntosh as Potty Mouth, and Ty will go from 21st on the grid in the number 35 Shift Esports Toyota.
The other Covered Bridge Racing entry, car 99, lining up 22nd. That is Mark Rebelis.
Starting 23rd, ever an underdog in these Daytona races, but always finding his way towards the front. It's car 89, Brent Jones for Abbott Motorsports, rolling 23rd.
Starting 24th, winner 3 times in the Elite Racing Leagues across 3 different series, Gavin Hibbs in the Strictly Stock Motorsports 95.
Starting 26th is Zach Rogers in car number 1.
Well, that's great.
Starting
25th is Gavin Higgins. He's driving the KOD Motorsports number 13. You want to do 27th, David?
I do, yeah. We do 27. 3-time Cup Series champion, Tate Lytle, and defending runner-up driver in this race in the Pro Edge Racing number 56.
And in the 28th spot, we have Carlos Acosta, broadcaster extraordinaire, and the Inca Cola number 02 for RK Motorsports.
Starting 29th will be the Hucks Machine. That's Ryan Gavel, car number 01 for Lake Norman Motorsports.
And I touched on this a little bit in the pre-race. Here comes a string of some of our former champions here in the Elite Cup Series, including this driver, a 2-time Daytona 500 winner, and the winningest driver in the Elite Cup Series. That's Tyler Fody.
Starting 31st is defending Truck Series winner at Talladega, Kyle Hanshaw for Kyle Hanshaw Racing in car 46.
2-time Belly Up Sports Cup Series champion, 2-time Daytona 500 winner, Matthew Weeks, starting 32nd.
Another Shift Esports Toyota with Seth Rawls, the Rocket Man, starting in 33rd in car number 25.
In the 34th position, another 2-time Cup Series champion, Gerald Campbell, car 00 out of the Do Good Motorsports stable with Donald the Eagle riding shotgun.
Dusty the Dragon Doer starts 35th for Do Good Motorsports in car 32.
2024B Rev Limit Workshop Series champion Leighton Norgard will roll off in the 36th position, number 12 for Abbott Motorsports.
In 37th, it's the boss man, Chad Frankenfield for Little Eagle Racing in car number 15.
Starting 38th, Joshua Personette in the Fueled Up Racing number 18.
Starting 39th and leading on the white flag lap of last year's Daytona 500 before ultimately falling short, it's car 26, Justin Fortner for Little Eagle Racing.
Rounding out the top 40, car 18, car 16 for Fueled Up Yes, car 16 for Fueled Up Racing. That is Jordan Owens.
Starting 41st is 2000 Busch Series champion and new driver for South Shore Racing in the 2 car. It's Jeff Green.
Starting 42nd, former elite winner here at Daytona, but on the road course in the 2022 Formula One Championship, Ryan Schold for Little Eagle Racing.
And starting 43rd is Pro Edge Racing Toyota driver David Tucker. That's definitely a car that you want to watch out for, and that is our full field for this 12th running of the Belly Up Sports Daytona 500, presented by Rev Limit Workshop. As the cars make their way down the pit road here, we kind of briefly touched on it here, but any thoughts, maybe some predictions here from you, Zach, or potentially even from you, Dave?
It's so hard to predict this race, especially with, we talked about it a little bit, this Cup package so different than what we've seen with the trucks, the Grand National Series, ARCA last night. It's a very different package, lots of strong runs, fast runs, comers, goers, you'll see all night long. But these longer races, this Daytona 500 tends to reward experience, tends to reward those guys that know when to hit the button, when to hold off on an over-aggressive move. And I think when you look at this field, if I had to make a pick, if you made me make a pick for this evening, a guy that fits that bill and is still looking for that first Daytona 500 win, I really like Tate Lytle tonight.
He has been working on it. As Tate Lytle, he finished second in last year's Daytona 500. The real question, I think, is, can those Pro Edge cars control the race again like they did last year? The duels made it seem like no team was able to control a race beyond when it was Jonathan Cutlip and Garrison Hogan drafting at the front of the field in that second duel. But there's so many more vehicles in this race, I kind of find it difficult to believe that anyone will be able to control it. If I were making a quick pick, I'm going to pick Josh Adams in that 22 car. Pace car. Heading down pit road, Cale Pocock and Ray Bracey on the front row for the 12th Daytona 500. And the grace is green as Pocock gets on the loud pedal and gets us going here for the 2025 A season.
The waiting, the anticipation is over. The green flag in the air. Cale Pocock in car 60, Ray Bracey in that green and yellow car 7, leading this field through turns 1 and 2.
Great push by Jake Scarborough to Ray Bracey. Those two have worked together well in other series. Cale Pocock getting the push from Scott Crump on the bottom. And let's see who's the first to make a 3-wide move. We saw it all through that first duel. Thus far, though, everyone minding their P's and Q's, and it's just like how they paced around here several times. Ray Bracey on the top with that push from Scarborough, but they're not really side drafting at all. At the moment, it'll be Cale Pocock on the bottom, leading lap number 1 of the 2025 A season.
And just like that, we are underway. It's going to be a full season of excitement. You touched on it a little bit in the lead up to the green flag there. Obviously, there's been a lot of racing all throughout Speed Weeks. We even had the Clash to start this Speed Week, which was won by R.C. Enerson. The duels won by Scott Crump, Jake Scarborough. But this is really the first time in this Cup Series package that 40 cars have been on track. 43 cars, of course, starting tonight's race. And a lot of people are going to be learning what a difference that makes. You wouldn't think it would make a huge difference, but it really does change the way you approach a race here at Daytona.
Yeah, the more cars on track, the more treacherous, I think, the field around you can be. You're feeling comfortable in different spots on the track. As we see Josh Adams move to the top, we're seeing Ethan Burrell move to the top. The moves are not terribly aggressive right now. This field is somewhat feeling each other out. Nick Massey is now dropped to the bottom. He's heading to the back, I think, to let the cars in front of him breathe. I don't know that that's a move I would make in this Cup Series package, but Nick Massey's a former Daytona 500 winner. He knows what's best as Josh Adams working towards the race lead with help from Ethan Burrell.
Yeah, I believe Yeah, Nick Blake, that was the reason there. He was blinking in and out a little bit, so that was unfortunately, speaking from experience, a move of self-preservation there. I had that experience on Sunday in the Juicy Spider Truck Series, but plenty of time to recover from that, get back towards the front. No reason to panic just yet.
An experienced guy like Nick Massey certainly won't be panicked. I've also seen a couple of blinks from, I think it was Blake Reynolds on the bottom as well. So these guys just have to be mindful of that. And, we recall last year as he moves to the middle right now, Jonathan Cutlip made it a full 10 laps in this race before blinking out and ultimately retiring due to that connection issue problem. And here it is, the first 3-wide maneuver of the event. It is Ethan Stanley, Jonathan Cutlip working the middle. Jesse Racimus is headed there as well. And we're 3 wide from about 6th on back, and it's that middle lane that's moving forward.
It'll be interesting to see how those runs develop over the course of this evening. Johnny Thomas jumps down to the bottom lane and kind of checks it up a little bit at the same time that the middle kind of collapsed, and now we're back to 2 wide just as quickly as we had gone 3 wide.
It was the push from Stanley push from Cutlip that got Stanley up there into second on that bottom lane. Scott Crump has now gone around Cale Pocock on the bottom, but it's the big push from Ethan Stanley to the rear bumper of Johnny Thomas in that 83 car, and Johnny takes over control of this race.
Further back, you see some 3 wide there. That's Ty McIntosh in the middle with Michael Goodman behind him in car 44, but I don't think they had the muscle, and they're going to actually just slot in to that top lane behind this. Out front, Johnny Thomas leading the way in car 83.
Johnny Thomas leading, Stanley second, Cutlip third. Stanley and Cutlip, 2 of the more aggressive drivers in their respective duels. They're likely to try to work to the race lead here at some point. Back there, the biggest mover of the race so far, that's Tyler Fody. He was working 3 wide against Ty McIntosh. Like Matt said, Fody has worked his way from the 30th starting position all the way up into the top 15. He's currently about to be side by side with the starter from the 3rd slot, or rather the 5th slot in Blake Reynolds. So Tyler Fody rocketing forward early in this race.
And that's something that is really just a lot easier to do with this Cup Series platform than it was for our Xfinity and Truck Series drivers earlier in the week, and certainly Tyler Fody taking advantage of that early on. As you mentioned, he's already worked his way up to I'm seeing him in the 15th position right now, a gain of 15 positions so far in the starting lineup. And also, he's still very much mired in the pack. David Tooker has picked up 16 spots to get up to 27th so far.
Yep. These guys, if you're going to race a little bit timid, as Scott Crump making a move to the middle here, thinking about it and dropping in, there's going to be some guys that race here a little bit timid. They're not going to press the issue early in this very long 200-lap event. Those are drivers that are going to have that patience, and they're going to try to be there at the end. There are some guys who are going to want to get the track position and stay up front for all 200 laps. Tyler Fody, absolutely, on these plate tracks, is a guy that never wants to leave out of that lead spot. He always wants to be up front in these plate races. He's never willing to settle for running out the back. And you can see him making a 3-wide move to the middle with help from Ty McIntosh. He's going to go try to pick up his teammate Scott Crump in the middle.
3 wide near the front of the field. That's just outside the top 5. And we haven't seen much sustained 3-wide racing so far, but that's a lot of cars in that middle lane. Of course, I say that, and one of them jumps to the outside, I believe. Oh.
Corey's going to be in the wall here. Corey saves it.
Manages to get it back off the wall without sticking too much to that outside retaining barrier, which I'm sure was a relief to Dustin Dewar, Kyle Hanshaw, everybody in that outside lane. And Tyler Fody jumping to the bottom. Gavin Hibbs also jumping to the bottom. That kind of, like I say, broke up that 3-wide. We saw a lot more of it in the duels. Well, Dustin Dewar's got to think about it one more time. It just hasn't really worked long term so far to start this race.
I don't envision that it will. I ran one of the dual races. It seemed like 3 wide was a good way to make a couple of spots, right? You could jump 3 wide if you got a big run, take at least one spot away, maybe side draft the next car a little bit, and then get in front and get right back in line. That was kind of the way you had to make passes. But it wasn't like we could run sustained 3 wide like we did in the Truck Series on Sunday or you guys did in the Xfinity Series on Monday. It was a lot more of, in order to make passes, you went 3 wide. And what we're seeing right now is some guys are being very aggressive. Dusty Dewar comes to mind. David Hooker is already up to 12th from last starting spot. He comes to mind as someone who's just been a bit aggressive early here, willing to make those moves. And what we're seeing is some guys not aggressive early, trying to take it easy, manage this long race. With that is going to come those scenarios where you can make that jump 3 wide, but they're not going to sustain it for multiple laps over the course of a run. And I think that's ultimately for the best here as we look to make some laps in this race. We're only, a 20th of the way through so far.
Only a 20th of the way through. Plenty of racing left to go, and plenty of excitement I'm sure we'll see in the YouTube chat. And be sure to let us know you're watching. Already seeing lots of conversation activity, some picks. Robert Hill Jr. has Ray Bracey as his pick to win this evening. That would be certainly an exciting one. Neil Rutt rooting for the 372 South Shore Racing entries here we have in the Elite Racing Leagues. So
Neil,
be sure to chime in. Let us know who you're rooting for, who your pick to win is. And thank you for watching the Elite Racing Network.
Absolutely. Up front, it has been a bit of a stalemate as the guys are not dicing a ton for the race lead. It's Josh Adams leading the top with help from Ethan Burrell and Ray Bracey. On the bottom, it's Jonathan Cutlip, Johnny Thomas, and Ethan Stanley, the top 3 in each line. And from there on back, things have been shuffling over and over. Right now, it's Chris Wright in the middle, but he's going to get up in front of his teammate, Jeff Green. And everything's still remaining single file, or rather double file all the way back towards where you get into a few interesting names that are running in that single file train near the back of this pack. And I want to call this out because a couple of these guys are guys I wouldn't expect to be running single file at this point, like Chad Frankenfield, who's sitting back here in that single file line. But also, this is a group that if they're not careful and if some sort of near incident happens ahead, they could lose the draft. And what we saw in the last Daytona 500 was a near incident near the first green flag pit stop caused the pack to spread apart. And when it did that, there was only like 7 cars in the pack, and we ran 170 green flag laps before the first caution came out. I wonder if Trey Holmes, Matthew Weeks, Tate Lytle, Chad Frankenfield, if they're not being maybe a little too cautious here, because you could kind of lose the draft pretty quickly if something were to happen in this big pack.
The only thing I feel is fair to mention with that, because I'm with you, we've seen a lot of green flag racing over the course of both that second duel, last season's Daytona 500. Those Pro Edge cars are all running together. I'm pretty sure the entire Little Eagle stable back there with Chad Frankenfield, Ryan Scholl, Justin Fortner. I feel like there's definitely some team communication there, and that might not be the worst thing in the world if you are expecting this to be a long green flag run, because you're going to want those teammates around you when it's time to pit under a green flag circumstance. They probably want to be a little further up. I'd agree with you on that, but it's nice to know where your teammates are as you start working 15, 20 laps into a green flag run, because you're going to want to have tabs on them as we get closer and closer to that pit cycle. We're still probably at least, I mean, gosh, that second duel that went green to checkered, it was in the early 40s when most of the field pitted. Obviously, there were a couple on an alternate. Oh, sideways up front almost. Cutlip is now middle of 3 wide with no help at all. That's going to allow Josh Adams to lead that outside lane, but Ethan Burrell's got to break out front with the lead, and the bottom lane has all the momentum right now.
Wow. Jonathan Cutlip, I thought he got turned sideways in front of the field right there. That's why I made a noise, because I just was assuming we were wrecking. Josh Adams kind of moved to the outside of Cutlip, but it was almost as if he wasn't expecting to get to the outside so quickly. I think the side draft might have pulled Cutlip back a little bit. Up front, Ethan Burrell took the race lead, but now it's going to be held by Scott Crump, being pushed by Gavin Hibbs in car number 95. On the bottom, third car back, that's David Tooker. David Tooker started dead last in this race. It is lap 16. He is up into the top 5. Now that lane has kind of lost its momentum. Tooker's starting to fall back a little bit, but excellent drive to the front so far by Pro Edge driver David Tooker. He is not taking the strategy of his group of teammates there. He wants to go to the front of this field, and he's currently doing that as Gavin Hibbs now makes a move to the bottom, looking for the race lead.
Oh, Jake Scarborough getting a piece of the wall there on the outside of that 3 wide. Again, he's able to keep it pointed the right direction, and ew. Huck. What is on the hood of this car?
Yeah, get that off of there. Nick Massey did lose the draft there, and that's going to result in him losing a lap right here. He's staying up top towards the wall. There is a group of cars 3 wide in the middle of the pack. Massey holding that line very nice and steady. A few of our ARCA drivers could probably watch Nick Massey run around this place. But he'll absorb into this pack, I believe, and look for a caution to get that lap back. And a long race, but Nick Massey's going to have some good fortune here, I think, to be able to get back in this thing.
Definitely a tough start to the race, but look, again, very long race. 200 laps, 500 miles. Plenty of time, especially if you can keep up with the draft, kind of cycle in with these guys, even if it does go long green flag run. Just have people to pit with, have people to draft with, wait for, inevitably we will get a caution, keep himself in that contention for a free pass or a wave around, whatever the case may be, and it's a whole new ball game.
Yep, just need that connection to stay stable there for Nick Massey. He's got his teammate Jeff Green right behind him. I think they'll be all right as we shift our focus back up to the race lead, where Josh Adams has now taken over the lead in front of Gavin Hibbs in that 95 car, with Ethan Burrell third, Ty McIntosh up into fourth, and Scott Crump back to fifth. There's a pair of Lake Norman Chevys there on the top of the racetrack between Crump and Ethan Stanley. That's a little teamwork I would expect to continue throughout the rest of tonight. As those Lake Norman cars are usually very, very good at working together during these plate races.
They certainly are, and I think that'll be a familiar sight. And now you see Johnny Thomas jumping to the outside, trying to get in front of those Lake Norman cars on the outside.
Yep, trying to pull that line forward. Stanley drove it up into the fence behind him. Now, Zach, as we think about, I think we're about halfway through this first green flag run, approaching that first round of green flag pit stops.
Absolutely.
The tires might be somewhat of a factor on a hotter, slicker Daytona racetrack. 94 degrees, the current track temp right now. In my experience with this next gen car, and it's somewhat limited, but we ran at night, right? The track was cool. The grip was there. We didn't need to take tires at all. And I felt very secure pretty much the entire race. But in the sunlight, I'm wondering if these guys aren't going to experience a little bit of tire wear and might want to take tires during their green flag pit stop. And then if there's going to be some folks choosing to take no tires and assuming that they can keep on, driving this car that same amount that they have been, maybe without the grip. And could that lead to some potential calamity as we roll through our first green flag pit cycle?
And I'll throw one more out there. I wouldn't be surprised if we see some people maybe take 2 tires, thinking, if I would take 4, that's going to cost me a couple extra seconds on pit road. But 2 will improve the right sides. That's where most of your wear is going to be. But of course, as we all know, the other side of taking 2 tires is it frees up a race car. Well, you've got a hot racetrack. Do you necessarily want a freer, looser race car? Or is that going to be something that catches somebody out, particularly on pit exit, on that flat apron that's got to be dirty and filthy with all the marbles and debris that are part of some of the more recent updates on iRacing? It's going to be, we'll see what the decision is there, but a lot of factors, and like I say, with some of those updates with the marbles and everything like that, maybe even more to think about than normally in this race.
It's a great Sorry, that's a great point. I wasn't even necessarily thinking about the apron entrance, but you're right. It was loose to some degree at night with a lot of grip. I think that could be a real trouble spot for guys on this green flag pit stop and getting up to speed, especially if they choose 2 tires or no tires on this green flag pit stop that I'm assuming is coming. Now, there's a very strong likelihood as Gavin Hibbs bailing out of the pack here. There's a strong likelihood we do get that caution. These guys are dicing it up just a little bit more for the race lead. We've seen a number of pass attempts and drops out of that top lane to go for a pass for the race lead. It hasn't necessarily resulted in any contact so far, but as drivers get more comfortable with each other, as moves get made a little quicker and more aggressively, we'll start to see some moves get to be a little reckless, and I think that's where the trouble could start to happen.
Well, to quote the philosopher McReynolds, according to the trends, you average about 8 cautions a race here in the Elite Daytona 500. I think a lot of times what we see is maybe you get an early one when everybody's amped up, but at some point you settle into a long green flag run like this, and then when it gets to the end of the race, that's when the chaos starts to ramp up, because like you say, everybody starts making those moves to put themselves in position to win the Daytona 500. So starting to look like another race like that. Obviously still plenty of time for that to change, but I would not be surprised if this gets to be a long green flag run. And the other part of that, of course, is once we have that first green flag pit stop, right? That's when inevitably the field gets broken up a little bit. Some people do a much better job maximizing that pit road entry, maximizing that pit road exit, nailing that pit strategy, even picking the right people to pit with. We saw this in the duels. Pit with too few people, you're not as fast once you get back on track. You don't have enough cars drafting together. Pit with too many cars, that's when you start running into people on pit road, on pit entry, on pit exit. There's a fine line there. You don't want 20 cars pitting with you. You don't want 2 cars pitting with you. And that tends to spread out the field as you get longer and longer in that green flag run, which means less of a likelihood to run into somebody on the racetrack and bring out a caution.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I have 2 observations here as we are, to my understanding, about 20 laps from green flag pit stops. Observation 1 is excellent work by the do-good drivers. Justy Dewar and Gerald Campbell up here 4th and 5th on that outside lane. A couple of guys working their way forward, gaining some good track position in preparation for this green flag pit stop. My second observation is that the Pro Edge Toyotas have decided it is somewhat go time. Matthew Weeks, Trey Holmes, Tate Lytle have lined up, gotten in the outside lane, and started working their way forward near the back of the pack. So I look for those 3 drivers to start really pushing forward here and trying to make their way to the front. Another guy that's starting to make his way to the front is a guy that we know has a lot of experience, even if it's not in this Elite Belly Up Sports Cup Series. That's Blake Reynolds, starting to work his way forward. Currently, he is 3 wide, help from Justin Vandermarl, and they're starting to get a little bit of a fueled up line going as Jonathan Cutlip now works his way to the middle lane, and Chris Wright's also going to tag onto that as well, and Nick Delicato has seen enough. He's backing out to the apron here. So right as I start making that observation that those Pro Edge Toyotas think it's go time, they've already seemed to lag back because this field has gotten really jumbled up.
Definitely a lot of moving around. As there you see the close-up of that number 9 stuck in the middle. Starting to get a little bit more help there, but still just a very dicey situation. You can see that car starting to move around on those older tires a little bit. This hotter surface, like you mentioned, sunlight here, unlike the duels under the cover of night.
Ooh, Vandermarl got the wall.
Yeah, that was Justin Vandermarl that got a piece of the wall on corner entry. It looks like he's got to be okay and be able to tuck in somewhere here, maybe behind Jeff Green and Gavin Hibbs here at the end of this pack.
Ooh. Sorry, Chris got Ty a little bit squirrely pushing there in the middle lane, trying to really make that middle surge forward. But right now, Chris just not able to get Ty square for those bump drafts. And ultimately, it's just not moving that line forward at all. What's going to help is John Cutlip dropping down to the middle, but he's going to run into a brick wall that is Dusty Dewar. Cutlip has to lift a little bit. Ultimately, this just kind of blocks up the field. The front 6 kind of making a little bit of headway. This 3 wide battling, very intense. A lot of guys have kind of dropped off the back of this group.
Yeah, that is interesting to see that some of these drivers have almost left entirely from that group, and we'll see how this plays out. In fact, it looks like they were approaching. That may have been Josh Personette running 42nd, who's about to lose a lap here. Obviously, that would have been
right now
a while ago when he lost a draft, and I think he's blinking as well. That's not what these leaders want to see as they're approaching him.
Yep. Personette holding his line on the bottom of the racetrack. Everybody able to stream around up top. Justin Fortner would be next, and the battle for the lucky dog would be between Personette and Nick Massey in that blue and the light blue and dark blue 48. There's that battle right there. So if the caution were to come out, those two would be fighting for that lucky dog slot. Massey jumps to the outside, and I think he'll get him down the back straightaway here, but Personette is definitely in the draft of the pack now. Fortner is next. He also has lost the draft in that 26 car. So the lapped car is definitely going to be a problem. Oh, Blake Reynolds sideways up front. Cutlip into Campbell. They're going to wreck on the front straightaway. Vandermarl in the wall. Wadsworth's going to save it. Campbell's going to save it. This might only be a one-car incident. Oh, I can't believe that's only going to collect one car. It's just going to be Vandermarl, I believe, that got damage in this.
And that will be our first caution of the evening. We'll get a look here on the Revelous Photography Replay Machine. A little bit of a bump there. And that just sets off this chain reaction. I'd say it was more than one car. A couple of cars get a piece of the outside wall on each other there. Jeff Green scraping against the wall. I couldn't tell if that was maybe Ryan Gable in front of him. We'll get another look here.
It's either Gable or Jesse.
I think, Jesse gets a piece of the wall behind Gerald Campbell here, right here. And I think Gable maybe keeps it out of the wall. It's hard to say. That probably didn't hurt anything, but he is in the wall.
Even Vandermarl's damage isn't very severe.
No, that could be a lot worse for the angle he turned in there.
I don't think Cutlip's going to have too much damage.
Say that. Guess who has a meatball? There is a
Yeah.
meatball. So it must have caught right on that right front. I'm sure it's going to be a toe link and hopefully only a 30-second required repair. And then he might be in good shape. We'll see.
Race control, Shea Mitchell going to have to clear a lot of the black flags here. Campbell ends up going and he clips Wadsworth. Wadsworth's going to make the save, the good hands save of the race early on here. Very nearly wiped himself out, our last year's defending champion. A bunch of guys have black flags from hitting pit road. I believe Nick Massey took to the grass to avoid the wreck, which is going to ruin him getting a lucky dog.
Looks like Josh Adams is going to win the race off pit road here.
I don't believe any of those guys took tires. So maybe our concerns with tires were somewhat unfounded.
Well,
we weren't sure.
I don't know. Let's see. I think those top three probably didn't take tires because they're in the 13-second pit time range, but pretty much everyone behind them is in the 14 and 15-second range. But I was just going to say, this first caution might be a good time for our first ad break of the evening.
That is a great point. I agree.
Racing isn't easy, but experiencing it is. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat with the industry's leading sim racing game. Drive on laser scan replicas of the greatest racing circuits from around the world. Go head-to-head against other drivers chosen by skill-based matchmaking to ensure competitive racing at every level. Compete across all your favorite series. In officially licensed cars, engineered to deliver the most accurate driving experience possible. Join a race or host your own with players from across the globe. Race against the computer or in a league with friends. Feel the thrill behind the wheel. visit iRacing.com.
Since 2010, race fans have had one burning question. When will the Xfinity Series return to Worldwide Technology Raceway? You asked, NASCAR delivered. On Saturday, September 6, 2025, the magic is back. The track that launched the legendary careers of Harvick, Busch, Keselowski, Edwards, and Earnhardt Jr. is now ready to write that next chapter. We're going to introduce you to a new crop of future champions and Hall of Famers. And in the process, we'll create more of the greatest moments in racing history. NASCAR Weekend 2025, the NASCAR Cup Series Championship Playoffs, the Confluence Music Festival, and now 250 miles of the NASCAR Xfinity Series. 2 incredible races, 1 challenging track, a 3-day party of epic proportions. Go to www.raceway.com and lock in your weekend racing and camping packages for as little as $20.
Welcome back to Daytona as we work our first caution of the race. Lap 33 out of 200. We do have a stage break tonight. It won't be including a caution flag, but we will be awarding stage points there at lap 65. This pit stop guarantees that these drivers can make it to lap 65 on their current set of tires and fuel. And so as we go green, Zach, are these guys going to go crazy with regards to getting that stage?
Well, if the races we saw earlier this week are any indication, it's quite possible. As before we go back to green, that's Justin Vandermarle, unfortunately, still sitting on pit road. That meatball, much worse than we figured. So it looks like he's probably going to be done for the night, and there he just escaped his car.
As we go back to green, unfortunate for Justin Vandermarle, a second consecutive early retirement from the Elite Daytona 500 presented by Rev Limit Workshop. We are green once again. It is Josh Adams being pushed by Blake Reynolds and Ray Bracey up in that top lane. Scott Crump, help from Dusty Dewar and Jonathan Cutlip on the bottom. And as we go back to green, we saw those pushes and everything getting a little more aggressive there at the end of that race. Oh, here comes Reynolds up top.
I think that wasn't one of those aggressive pushes that kind of shuffled Josh Adams out there and didn't really get to capitalize on it, because that just opened the door for Dustin Dewar and Jonathan Cutlip to jump in front of that outside lane.
Yep, Dusty Dewar to the race lead here, pushed by Jonathan Cutlip. Really, really advantageous move by car 32. At the line, give it to Dusty. A lap led for that 32 car. Teammates working the bottom lane. That's Scott Crump and Tyler Fody for Lake Norman Motorsports down there. Jake Scarborough, Duel 2 winner, working that bottom lane as well, with push from Jeff Green in car number 2. First time we've seen the South Shore entry up into the top 10 here today. He's being followed by Kachow Corey Abbott. So a few new faces as pit stops jumbled the field up a little bit, as did that wreck.
And of course, again, Daytona 500, one of our bigger broadcasts of the year. Lots of new viewers. Have to mention, we do it every year this time of year. Yes, it is that Jeff Green, the 2000 Busch Series champion, indeed. Quite the avid sim racer here in Elite, and running near the front here on lap 36.
Having a good run. I think, hopefully Jeff is able to keep it in the race, keep it clean. Great looking car, painted by the car right directly to his outside. The driver of number 7, Ray Bracey, painted all of those South Shore cars. Hopefully, they stay in one piece here tonight, as Scott Crump took the race lead, jumped in front of Dusty Dewar, is now dropped to the bottom in front of Tyler Fody, and Dewar with another big push from Jonathan Cutlip, who was just sideways for the race lead, not 3 laps ago, in what is being deemed a racing incident there for that first caution. I mean, Cutlip's race was very nearly over a matter of seconds ago, and he's already back out here bump drafting Dusty Dewar and shoving him towards the lead.
Jonathan Cutlip in that fluorescent yellow 5 car that will stand out in the pack here today, and I imagine we'll see it up front a lot as well. Right now, second in line on that outside lane behind Dustin Dewar in car 32. Oh,
Ooh.
there's a that might have been, I don't know if that was maybe Pocock or Abbott. It was definitely one of the Abbott Motorsports cars that ended up on the apron there.
It was Pocock. As Cutlip drops to the race lead, Pocock and Johnny Thomas bounced off of one another there. But as we track to the front straightaway, it's Jonathan Cutlip taking that race lead from Scott Crump. I want to shout out both of these drivers leading our respective lanes. Somewhat disappointing season last year from the two of them, as Dewar, trying to maybe think about going 3 wide on Cutlip, decides better and pushes that 5 car. Jonathan Cutlip did not win a race last season. Somewhat surprising, as here comes Blake Reynolds to the outside. Cutlip throws that big block. Bracy going down to the bottom. This might get hairy here, 3 wide. I might not get to finish my point on Jonathan Cutlip.
Scott Crump jumping in front of Jonathan Cutlip. Now he's kind of trying to figure out, is it got to be the middle lane? Is it got to be the top lane? Which one's going to get me to push? Sticks with the middle lane for now, and I don't know if that was the move.
No, I don't know if it was. Ray ended up going with Dewar, I think, trying to hang the 66 out, like 66 has hung some other people out, and it just did not work out for him. Cutlip and Reynolds able to power through with that tandem draft, working their way back towards the front. They are 3 wide in the mid pack behind, and things are a little bit hairy back there around Dusty Dewar, Ray Bracy, Ethan Burrell.
You mentioned Blake Reynolds, and it's kind of an interesting situation with that Channel 199 sim racing entry, because new team here in Elite, of course, Blake Reynolds, new to Elite, but a very experienced iRacer, formerly was once in the Championship 4 in the Coke Series, so definitely no questioning his credentials, but he doesn't have those relationships and friendships and or even just people just don't know how he races here in Elite if they're not necessarily familiar with his past work. And definitely it's a blessing and a curse at a place like Daytona, because a lot of what happens in these super speedway races is working with people you're familiar with people you trust, and he's got to work on building that trust tonight. I mean, yes, he's one of the best to do it, but he's got, impress the people he's racing with in this pack.
Familiarity is so important on these play tracks. I always like having a team car or somebody that I know I can work with in front of me. And if it's not someone I'm comfortable with, I'm much less comfortable myself. So if you see guys working well together in this race, no, that's a relationship that they've worked on over the course of many Elite racing seasons. We have a lot of veterans in this league, not a ton of rookies. Blake Reynolds, one of them. Another rookie there on that bottom lane is Gavin Higgins in car 13. That's another guy that he's done a lot of racing in our lower series, but those guys are not all going to be the Cup Series drivers, the guys racing with Higgins here on Wednesday nights. So what kind of relationships can Gavin Higgins form in this race as well? It's all part of that bigger picture that's going to lead to the final painting that is the results of this 2025 Daytona 500. Is how do these guys learn what each other's does, how do they draft and work with other cars on the racetrack. In this next gen package, it's so reliant on other cars around you. Who can you trust, who can you not trust? Right now, as you look forward from Gavin Higgins on board of that 13 car, working in with Mark Urbilas in that 99, Lake Norman Motorsports has 4 cars in the top 5 right now. Justin Wadsworth has joined Scott Crump, Ethan Stanley, and Tyler Fode in the top 5. That's a group that I look at as kind of an example of how you make that teamwork operate. It's them and Pro Edge Racing in this Elite Cup Series. The two dominant teams. I feel very strongly that as Scott Crump leads this race, Jonathan Cutlip working in with Ethan Stanley, Justin Wadsworth, and Tyler Fode, that these Lake Norman cars are working to control this race. They saw how Pro Edge controlled this race last year. I think this group knows they can do that, but they have to align the cars properly. They have to get things together. They haven't been able to organize that yet. Jonathan Cutlip's right in the way, and he's going to keep making life miserable for them in terms of trying to take over this race, lead a bunch of lines right up until the end of this one, because Cutlip's been very fast. He's been very competent, and I think that's going to work against a controlling race. But here comes Tyler Fode to the outside of his teammate Scott Crump and give the race lead once again to Tyler Fode. It's going to be a really competitive night, I feel, because Jonathan Cutlip and the Pro Edge group are going to be working against the Lake Norman guys. That teamwork aspect is always going to be present. The relationships, it's all very complex on the racetrack, Zach.
It really is. And it's so much a factor of what happens in these super speedway races. Actually, I believe that was Ethan Burrell we saw on the apron there. He tucks in back behind that bottom lane, but it really is so much about being able to find people you can work well with. As there you see Scott Crump getting a little bit sideways from a push from Jake Scarborough on that bottom lane. Crump in the 90, Scarborough in the white and red 77, second in line on the bottom there.
Yep. 3 wide mid-pack behind Scott Crump and Scarborough. David Tooker and Ryan Gable trying to work their way forward. As Scarborough makes contact with Crump, they almost wreck. Everybody saves it. Bottom lane checks up. Maybe Ethan Burrell knew something we didn't. That's why he dropped out. Chris Wright now making a move to the bottom. He'll be pushed by Scarborough and McIntosh. Crump loses a little bit of track position, but everyone else is okay. And now you have to look back and see, did anyone lose the pack due to that checkup? Doesn't seem like it at this point, but that's always a risk with those near miss type of accidents, is if the pack loses, if somebody loses the pack, they could go a lap down like Nick Massey did earlier. And while Massey got the lucky dog, Josh Personette did not get the lucky dog. He's currently in line for it. It can really ruin your race if something like that happens. But here goes Chris Wright to the lead, pushed by Scarborough. And Wright's going to jump up in front of Tyler Fode.
And that's, I mean, you talk about those relationships. Sometimes it has nothing to do with whether or not you like or dislike a guy. You saw how hard Jake Scarborough was trying to push Scott Crump. They couldn't get anywhere. For whatever reason, it just didn't work. Scott Crump was fighting that car and ultimately fell out of lane. Then Jake Scarborough gives that same push to the 9 car, and out to the front they go. And now he's out front with, he's on the receiving end of the push from the 35 of Ty McIntosh. And that's something that, you know, for both Jake and Scott, you know, they're got to think about, okay, that didn't work. It's not necessarily personal, but they're probably not going to want to work together a whole lot if that's what's going to happen. Whereas, obviously, Jake had very different connection.
Contact on the back straightaway. McIntosh moved up in front of Wright. Wright did not want to push that 35 car. He wanted the race lead. McIntosh ultimately ends up in the top. Wright and Crump made contact there on the back straightaway. McIntosh will fall back to the front bumper of Chad Frankenfield in the 15 car. And Chris Wright will lead the race. That was nearly another incident where just a little, they're racing very aggressively. We are not at the quarter way point in this race yet. We're not even coming to 50 to go. Very aggressive moves on the back straightaway.
And man, it's so easy for a move like that to happen here at these super speedway races with the runs this next gen car produces. You see an opening, you go for it. There's only one problem. Sometimes a guy in another lane is looking at the same opening and makes the same move. You meet in the middle. Sometimes you're able to save it like they were able to do. Sometimes it ends in a huge wreck.
Yeah. It's, you know, we say, we do a lot of, I'll call it, it's not condescending, but it's more questioning why they're so aggressive from the booth and in broadcast view. In the car, that's a split to second decision by Chris Wright. It's either push, tie, or cut to the middle. He makes the split to second call. Cut into the middle. I've got the run. I'm going. Scott Crump is at that exact moment. It's like, I've got the run. I'm going to the middle. And it ultimately results in that contact. But that's kind of the story of the plate race, right? It's the adventure of, you know, you're making a move. You're going to calculate how risky it is if you're going to make that move with any sort of, load time. If you're going to say, okay, my run is building up, I can, effectively go somewhere with this run, or you can do what Scott Crump just did. And the bottom's open. I'm taking it and go. And it's a lot of that, especially in this new, plate package with this next gen car. Everything happens very quickly. You can be up at the front one lap like Jake Scarborough was, and then be 13th the next lap. And then you'll be back up at the front 2 laps later, and then you'll be back at 13th again. And you just kind of have to ebb and flow with the race. and hope that, it all falls your way by the end of the race. So I think it's makes for a more chaotic race and a much better viewing experience for us than it was a few years back. I think the year Johnny Thomas won it was single file basically all year long, as Chris Wright trying to ruin that beautiful number 9 car, bounced it off the fence, kept it clean, kept it straight though, and he gives the push to Scott Crump. But it's David Tooker leading Jeff Green on the bottom. Zach, those guys started 41st and 43rd.
And there you saw there was the move to the outside from Jeff Green. Man, that was a weird. I almost wonder if he got hot from pushing, and now he's going to have to fall in line here on the outside. But that was a very sudden move from Jeff Green.
You know what I think it was? I think it was exactly what we were just talking about. It was I'm going to make the move now. And he made that move, but he saw the other car in the top lane starting to move down. And so Jeff kind of bailed on the move. It was, I think, a reasonable move from a veteran to kind of bail on the attempted pass for the lead there, to go ahead and, fall back in the pack. It's okay. We'll keep going. We'll keep racing. But he went for a move, saw it wasn't going to work, and bailed out of it.
Here we are on board with Chris Wright as he gives the shove to Scott Crump, who now finds David Tooker in front of him on that outside lane. And that's always a tricky spot to be. Well, it was. Now David Tooker drops down to the bottom. But that third car in line, whichever lane it may be, is always such a tough spot, because if you're second in line, very simple. Push real hard until the numbers start turning red on the dash, and then get some air in the car. That third car in line is a very tricky spot to be in, because you don't want to, as they say, push the pusher. If you push that second car in line at a time he's not expecting to push, and he ends up catching that first car in line out of shape, not squared up with that push, bad things can happen. So it's always, you want to keep as close as you can as that third car to keep the momentum, keep the draft, keep the energy going, but you also don't want to trigger an accident.
No, you're right. It's something I was actually learning in that dual race that I was able to run on, last Wednesday night. You can push as that third car a little bit in this package, and you actually need to move that line forward. If the third car isn't really pushing, and it's something I wasn't necessarily doing, I was taking your advice. I was, I'm not going to push. I'm trying not to get the car in front of me as squirrely at all. Let's just, be respectful here. My line wasn't moving forward. And I got closer to the guy in front of me, and I started giving him the occasional push. I wasn't giving him the tandem draft, so to speak, like Jesse Racimus is giving to David Tooker right now. I wasn't doing that, but I was right up on his back bumper, and my lane started moving forward. And I realized this is how you have to do it. There's a fine line there. Obviously, you can't be giving the same bump draft, but you can be really close, and you can kind of give that extra bubble of air, slide, push forward. And that's, I think, something that, these guys are going to have to learn, that how to make these lanes move forward. One observation I've had is that Scott Crump has had a really tough time taking a push. I'm not sure what it is, because I pushed Scott Crump last Wednesday. He was pretty stable. I'm wondering if Scott maybe misjudged his steering ratio, maybe didn't adjust it, because I adjusted mine off of the base. The steering ratios in these cars is a good way to make some adjustments, some internal feel for the driver. And so if you want to turn the wheel a little bit less, you can kind of, I think in the next gen car with that rack and pinion, you lower it down, and you have to turn the wheel a little bit less to get the car to turn versus raising it up. I turned mine down. I did not want to move the wheel so much in this next gen car. It ultimately helped me be a lot more stable. I'm seeing this 90 car be a really wiggly. It's probably one of the wiggliest cars out there. So I'm wondering if this car is maybe dealing with a little bit of kind of floatiness in that wheel, where that lane is the lane that he's leading isn't quite as effective, but it's working for him right now. So maybe I'm just, blowing smoke out my ears here, but I feel like Scott's been a lot more stable in races past in these plate races. And I mean, he's a very adept plate racer, but I've seen other cars take pushes a lot better. Even David Tooker right there got a little bit squirrely, but that's because the push from Racimus was so massive. I think that 90 car might have spun out. Oh, contact.
Gerald Campbell dropped to the bottom. He was not clear. Mark Rebellis was there, fortunately, to gather it back up. And Mark gives him that spot on the bottom lane to keep us clean. But
I'm sure. Thankfully, there, Mark's having a good run. He's been in the top 10 a couple of points tonight. If Scott watches this back, correct me, Scott. Let me know if there's anything there, or if you're just, if it was just some awkward pushes. Maybe it was just some awkward pushes. But from our eye, I know I've seen that 90 car more stable than it has been tonight.
Closing in on the end of the first stage, we're, I guess, about 7 laps away from lap 65.
This is when business starts to pick up. Those guys in the mid pack, you can already see it. Blake Reynolds has already decided to make it 3 wide. The business picks up now. It's go time. The side drafting of that top lane to the bottom has commenced. You can see Jonathan Cutlip, Tyler Fody, even Scott Crump have changed their lane in each corner. They drop down to that bottom lane. They side draft. They hold them back. And you can see him do it again right here. Jonathan Cutlip already, sets up his entry to the corner by dropping down. And no matter how strong that push is by Jesse Racimus, those cars on the outside just hold back that bottom lane from making an advance forward.
A lot of movement right now, side to side in that high lane. Once you get about 3 cars back, they're just having a little bit of trouble all getting lined up together. I don't know if that's getting longer in the run, seeing a little bit more of the effect of that tire wear, or they're just starting to get a little more antsy and maybe trying to form up that middle lane, because we do see him 3 wide a little further behind that.
Matthew Weeks leading that lane, being pushed by Blake Reynolds and Ray Bracey, and they're starting to move forward. That's definitely a line making some progress. Ryan Gable throwing that block. They're going to be 4 wide entering turn 3. Oh. Not a spot you want to be. Gable, Hibbs, McIntosh, they're going to bounce off of one another. Goodman in the wall. Everybody keeps it straight. They're still 4 wide. Finally back to 3. Oh, that was a heart-wrenching moment.
A lot of excitement for still very early in this race, and they still really haven't settled it out. Still have some 3 wide here, and Chad Frankenfield has to check up a little bit in the middle lane, keep from running over Ray Bracey.
Yeah, Ray got side drafted right there, and Chad probably could have spun out that 7 car, and it's a move we've seen from that 15, that's for sure. I'm glad Chad used the brain a little on that one.
Definitely a lot of chatter in the in-game driver chat about what exactly happened there, and now we're seeing further up front. Tyler Fody definitely is trying to figure out a way around these front 2 cars of Scott Crump and Chris Wright, but just hasn't been able to either get the run or find a place to put the nose of that 40 car.
Yeah, I think also Fody's trying to keep that side draft up, right? As long as Fody can keep the 70 of Racimus, the 77 of Scarborough pinned down in the corners, then the outside lane picks up that speed on the straightaways, and eventually he might have a chance to lead that bottom lane. So the play for him and John Cutlip is, let's run this middle lane, hold back this bottom lane as much as we can, and then try and settle out the stage amongst ourselves. Unfortunately, what's going to happen, and what did happen right there, was drivers are going to try to take that middle lane further in the back of the field. When they do that, they pick up speed because cars in front of them are running that middle lane. Well, once that middle lane starts to pick up, you end up with that 3 and 4 wide situation. And Matthew Weeks, one of the guys who was a big benefactor there, so was Blake Reynolds. Reynolds in the stage points right now, Weeks just on the outside looking in. But, here comes Ethan Stanley to the middle lane. It's going to keep happening. And if Cutlip and Fody keep running that middle lane, then that does give the opportunity for someone to try to take advantage up top. And as they slow down lanes, that's going to create checkups just like that. Jake Scarborough got checked up. They bottle everything up. But here comes Ethan Stanley again, 3 wide on Cutlip.
I think playtime is over for that middle lane. It's time to either choose one or the other, and boy, that was quite a move there from Ethan Stanley to kind of shuffle.
Johnny Thomas, big run to the middle. Oh. Sorry to cut you off, Zach. Oh, here comes Gable. They are slicing it up here.
Again, I don't know how much longer this bounce between the middle and the top is going to work. Well, now Johnny Thomas will drop to the bottom. That's going to help this lap at least. But, now it's Ethan Stanley jumping up to the middle lane in front of Scott Crump.
Stanley to the lead. Lap 64. Ready to be put on the board. 2 to go in the stage. Cullip now working to the middle around Tyler Fode. He'll have help from Matthew Weeks. Fode up to the top. He'll not have any help right here. Chris Wright tries to give him a little bit of a draft, but on the bottom, it's David Tooker pushed by Jesse Racimus. Up top, it's Ethan Stanley, Chris Wright, and Scott Crump. Then you've got Cutlip, Weeks in that middle lane. They drop to the bottom in front of Ryan Gable. Josh Adams now in the middle with Ty McIntosh pushing him. The fight for these stage points is berserk.
This is insane stuff. It'll be last lap of the stage right here. The next time by, we'll find out the stage winner. And right now, it's Chris Wright giving a huge shove to that 90 of Scott Crump. Will it hold?
Lake Norman Motorsports trying everything to control both of those lanes. Now they're going to be 3 wide up top. Blake Reynolds pushing Gavin Hips. Help from Michael Goodman. Chris Wright and Crump in the middle. Tooker and Stanley on the bottom lane. They're 3 by 3 by 3 as Stanley moves to the middle in front of his teammate.
What will Ethan Stanley do leading the way? Will he hold middle? Will he try to cut off this run to the high side? They go to the bottom. Scott Crump and Stanley to the bottom, but here comes Gavin Hibbs and Blake Reynolds up top. I think it's still got to be the Lake Norman cars to the line here.
Yep, Scott Crump's going to pull out last second here, try to grab the stage. No, he'll just push his teammate to the line to get that stage win. Stanley Crump 1-2. And then you could see the order all the way down. I think Michael Goodman might have gotten a stage point down there. Tough to say. That crazy battle might now cool off just a little bit. Jesse Racimus up to the top of the racetrack. He definitely got some stage points that time. And he'll head to the back now, hung out to dry. Ethan Stanley retains the race lead. It's Jonathan Cutlip, Matthew Weeks, David Tooker just behind him with Scott Crump, Ryan Gable pushing on the bottom.
And, we talked about a little bit, the challenge for Blake Reynolds trying to make some friends on the racetrack here tonight with none of his teammates here this evening. Unfortunately, they were unable to qualify into the Daytona 500 with 3 open cars on that Channel 199 team. Well, one of the guys he hooked up with there, Gavin Hibbs, another single car effort, and I guarantee both of them will remember how well that worked later in the race.
I think so. That seems like a good pairing. They almost made it work there for the stage win. Kyle Hanshaw going a lap down there on the apron, lets the leaders go by without creating any issues for them. As the rest of the pack rolls through the lapped car, I do want to note, in all that chaos, as Gavin Hibbs now looking for the race lead, he might be the only car dropping to the bottom here. Nope, he's going to have help from Josh Adams, does Gavin Hibbs. But there is a small group of cars that is sitting, we'll call it 2 seconds off the race lead, like the lead pack. I wonder if this group is officially lost the draft or not. And I'm certain they're this far back because they saw what kind of chaos was happening up front. But it's Ethan Burrell, Trey Holmes, Tate Lytle, Cale Pocock, the pole sitter, Zach Rogers, and then lapped car Josh Personette. We're going to have to check their lap times to make sure they aren't losing the draft, but this would not be a good time for it. Green flag pit stops are, I won't call them fast approaching, but they are on the horizon. And you don't want to be pitting from this far back, I don't believe.
Let's see. Oh, they are definitely out of the range there. That last time by Nick M. Delicato, who's kind of the last car in that group, was about a 45.8, and then pretty much everybody in this second pack here is in the 46.3 range. So, dangerous situation for these drivers.
Ray Holmes is now on pit road.
That's not ideal.
That's not what you want.
Let's
That
see.
It looks like it's been for longer than a typical pit stop also.
Yeah, no, he's 30 seconds into this pit stop and counting, so I have to think something has gone wrong for... He's got a meatball.
Wow. Did he blow
I'll see
the
if I
engine? Did he blow
I'll
the
see if
engine
I-
pushing in the pack?
I'm gonna investigate.
Wow.
That's
Well-
engine smoke that I saw when it towed. Oh no.
Trey Holmes potentially retired from this year's Daytona 500. He and Justin Vandermarl both somewhat of a repeat from last year's Daytona 500 when both had connection issues, though this time it's a engine expiring and a wreck taking them out. Now it's kind of up to Jonathan Cutlip to see if he can reclaim last year's debacle from that Daytona 500. Ethan Stanley continues to lead this race up front while we check on that Trey Holmes incident.
Well, unfortunately, my replay is not being very cooperative when it comes to following the 23 car. I cannot provide any more information on that one.
I might be able to. He was giving Ethan Burrell some very, very close bump drafts. And then got sideways.
Oh?
But that was it. I don't. And Tate got him sideways. I don't see how that caused a meatball flag, though. There was definitely like a near incident there.
Interesting.
If the contact that I saw was the contact that resulted in him getting a meatball flag, these guys got to be careful with their pushes, man. There was not much contact there. A very frustrating effort there for Trey Holmes.
I think we are going to be closing in on pit stops here. I'm hearing some driver chattering. Of course, the last pit stop was lap 31, so we're in that window.
Yeah, I anticipate these guys will try to run the fuel about as dry as they can. We've seen Ethan Stanley, Scott Crump be the cars kind of leading this line. Jonathan Cutlip's been up there pretty much the whole time as well. Dusty Dewar making a move to that bottom lane, so I expect pit stops are in the next lap or two.
I was about to say, you see a lot of cars, how long that bottom lane has gotten. That's usually a telltale sign of guys trying to make their way to pit road. Who bails this time? That is Chad Frankenfield and not a lot of other people.
That is not a good sign. Chad from the back of the field all by himself, and Chad was in the mid pack the whole way. I would have probably wanted to go with more people, and he definitely is going to have the fuel for it. And we'll hope that Chad doesn't lose the draft due to that pit call. I anticipate, and I'm seeing some pitting in calls. This is the lap right here, coming off turn 4.
And again, talked about, you don't want to pit with too few cars. You don't want to pit with too many cars. How many this time? That's a handful. We'll see if they can all get on pit road safely. See some tire smoke.
Oh, Higgins.
3 wide.
Higgins got sideways. Adams ran into Hibbs. Hopefully that didn't result in damage to either of those cars. Don't slide your box. You got to be in perfectly. Worth noting, we have 43 cars Daytona, only coded for 40 pit stalls. That's why Crump and Tooker in the same pit stall. Off pit road, John Cutlip did get slowed down. He leads him off pit road. Gable, Stanley, everybody.
Here's a lot of people coming to pit road in what was left of our lead pack.
Johnny Thomas, I think he got a black flag for Kyle Hanshaw for Dusty Dewar missed the pit box there. No speeding penalties. Dewar in the wall. Tough, and Dewar didn't uncheck the tires. Looks like everybody's taking tires though in this second group.
Well, he was definitely going to need him after sliding into his pit box. And unfortunately, I don't know if he's going to be able to stay with that group he pitted with after losing that much time. We'll see.
Yeah.
It looks like Michael Goodman is with him, but that might be about it.
Yeah, that might be it. The only black flag I saw for speeding on pit road was Kyle Hanshaw's.
He's serving that right now, and boy, unless it's my understanding, I could be wrong on this, if it's a speeding on exit, iRacing gives you the hold penalty that you can ask the officials to clear and turn into a drive-through, and I don't believe he did that. He was held for a long time there on pit road, so I don't know if that has changed or he simply didn't follow through with that and took the iRacing penalty.
Yeah, I think that's probably what happened. Hanshaw was already a lap down, so now he is 3 laps down. It's kind of going from bad to worse for Kyle Hanshaw. I think this pack's about to get very separated, Zach. What I'm seeing right now, there might be one pack, but I think it's only going to be about 25 cars deep once we get things all worked through after our set of pit stops here.
I'm sorry, I'm very confused by scoring on my end is very wrong, is what I'll say.
They haven't hit the line yet. This should be there now. Let's see where scoring takes us.
Okay, there we go. Yes, so that kind of settles things out. And I think you're right. Right now there's a pretty significant gap between 16th and 17th, but we'll see if this second group can kind of get, well, I guess the third group can get hooked up and try to make that first group a little bit bigger, because there's no doubt from about 8th on back we'll close in on that top 7, and in fact they have already done so.
Yep. Yeah, 8th on back is now the first group is 16 cars deep. From Ryan Gable to Justin Wadsworth on your scoring ticker there to the left. And they are side by side. Blake Reynolds took that momentum up to the top lane. So that first group now side by side for the lead. That might allow the group led by Ryan Schull to draw a bead. As long as they don't wreck each other here in turn 1. The checkup in that single file line was pretty hectic. But here's the second group: Ryan Schull, Josh Adams, Gerald Campbell, Jordan Owens. And this group needs to push. They need to try and catch up, I think, to that first group, and they're going to be losing time, I believe.
We'll see this time by, because this will be the first lap we've really seen this front group side by side and this second group lined up. So this could be our first barometer at how this is going to work out. You see Justin Wadsworth at the tail end of that front pack at a 45.1, and that's a half second slower for Ryan Schull. Well, actually, yeah, for Ryan Schull and company, who is now trying to work around Kyle Hanshaw.
Yeah, so that's split up the field really, really widely. I believe that's going to be an insurmountable gap for that second group, and Jordan Owens just got Gerald Campbell sideways back there. Their drafting is not particularly efficient. I believe that the way this front group has seen it, that's what they like to see right now. You want to break this up. It kind of takes the randomness out of this race, allows the cars that are up front to be the cars to decide the finish. It's how the race was looking last year, last season, right up until a late race caution changed everything, as it usually does. But if you're at the front of these next gen fields, you want the field to break up like this. You're looking at no Ethan Burrell, no Tate Lytle. They're back in this second group. Chris Wright, that's another one who could very well be a threat for the win. No Josh Adams in this group either. So. This is the kind of thing that happens in these long races and at these plate tracks in this next gen car that splits this race up and changes the complexion of things. And now we could very well see a very long green flag run.
And, I touched on that earlier in the race. That's what happens once you get that first green flag pit stop. It breaks up this pack, which now this lead pack going 3 wide a little bit. Jonathan Cutlip in between Tyler Fody and Blake Reynolds. We'll see, A, how this shakes up the front pack, and B, if that helps slow them down to close in that second group.
Yeah, these guys probably need to line it up, click off some laps, maybe just 2 wide. 3 wide's going to slow you down, I think. So it's probably a useful exercise to see how much that second group gains this lap. I think they probably will gain this lap. At the line, Gold, Campbell.
2/10 on the leader that time.
Gain 2/10. So, they would love to see these guys keep dicing it up 3 wide. Now, I think 2 wide, they're fine. I think the leaders can run 2 wide without losing time to this second group. So, if you see that 3 wide move again, that's when that second group's going to start to make up time. But, we'll see.
We will definitely see. Ryan Gable out front at the moment.
I was going to say, let's take stock of kind of who's in this front group. I think it's worth our time, especially if that second group's not able to close back in. It's Ryan Gable and Ethan Stanley up front, teammates for Lake Norman Motorsports. And in fact, Tyler Fody's there third on that outside lane. He's also part of that Lake Norman Motorsports group. On the bottom, it's Blake Reynolds. We've talked about him a good bit today. He's kind of been up at the front, pretty aggressive, finished second in his dual race. Jesse Racimus right there in that do-good car as well, having a really strong run.
Indeed, Jesse Racimus having a strong showing so far in that Do-Good Motorsports entry, looking to improve on what was an 8th place effort in 2023B for his best Daytona 500 finish. He has won at Daytona in the Cup Series, but that was in a 250 miler in the 2024 A season.
Yep. You've got Matthew Weeks in here in this pack as well. That's a former champion of this race and a former champion of the series. They're 3 wide again. Tyler Fody, the one in the middle right now. The Lake Norman group trying to keep Fody from dropping to the back. All this is doing is slowing this group down. Contact between Stanley and Gable trying to get that lane moving. It's not working. They're still 3 wide. And there's big gains being made by that second group. They're now 4.4 seconds back. They were 5 back. I think they're going to keep moving forward too. Now they're 3.5 back. This is everything that Ryan Schold and this whole second group wanted to see. You can't be doing this stuff if you want to spread this race out. I would describe this as short-sighted by a lot of these guys up here in the front pack.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough, right? Because I think for a lot of these guys, they're right now they're thinking, I'm up front. I need to get all the track position I can get. They're not worried about that second group, but you're 100% right. This is going to help bring in that second group, and that just adds more challengers to the fray as this green flag run continues. It kind of had a position of strength on that second group, and they're largely giving it away. There's still a little bit of a cushion there, but if it continues like this, it's not going to take long for that 3.5 second gap to go away. We'll see this time it's down to 3.3 at the line.
Yeah, I mean that 3.3 is much more surmountable, and that second group has really cleaned up their line. I think I'm seeing a lot less check up, a lot more of good pushing going on. Josh Adams really pushing Ryan Schold well. Gerald Campbell's providing that second good push from that third car in line, when needed, and they're doing a lot better, I would say, of keeping speed up than this front group is, because you're seeing a lot of dicing and slicing from these guys. Matthew Weeks dices to the bottom, gets in front of Blake Reynolds. He'll go to the race lead, and once again, just that movement in the middle of this group is just gonna keep allowing those guys in that second pack to close in.
There you see Jesse Racimus looking around a little bit there, but he didn't have much help behind him. Couldn't take the run he had built out of turn 2, and Blake Reynolds is really trying to push Matthew Weeks out front here, but we saw in that second duel that's not necessarily the kind of thing that works out, because that just allows with the runs this next-gen car builds. I mean, look how quickly there you see Nick and Delicato just close. Oh, contact!
Delicato almost got into the back bumper of Jesse Racimus. Now Reynolds goes up in front of that 10 car. And Delicato and Reynolds, Racimus a bit of a squirrely bump to Matthew Weeks. And here comes the Delicato to the bottom. I was going to say Delicato and Reynolds found a little something there when they drafted to the race lead a little bit ago. It doesn't seem to be bothering in Delicato right now as he cuts out from underneath Reynolds and goes for the lead himself in that Shift Esports number 10. It's Scott Crump taking things 3 wide once again. Though that second group did lose a good bit of time this last lap, had to bypass Josh Personette. They're back to 3.5, 4 seconds off of this front pack, but I'm not so certain. I'm not so sure that this front pack is done dicing it up.
Yeah, and honestly, you're seeing a little bit of antsiness from the second group as well, and they're starting to get a little more vocal on the drivers' chat to get everybody back in line and working together. They had a good thing going, and some guys just getting a little antsy, a little impatient at the moment to go get the marching orders back in line.
Yeah, they had a really good thing going there. I think it's still good, but it was the going around of Personette that was bad there from that group, as David Hooker almost hooks the 5 of Jonathan Cutlip. And they've been 2 and 3 wide. They have now singled out this first group. That's what you need to do if you want to keep this race separated out and keep some real contenders from rejoining this front pack. You want to single this first group out. Find a good leader, find a good pusher, and everybody get in behind them and work to that next pit stop. Johnny Thomas is in danger of losing this front draft.
He is. Going on board with Gavin Hibbs here in the 95 for Strictly Stock Motorsports, right now behind Justin Wadsworth, defending Cup Series champion on that bottom lane.
It's not even a danger anymore. Behind Gavin is 3 Lake Norman Chevys, and then it's a full second almost gap to Johnny Thomas. Johnny is going to have to attach on to this pack that's catching up to him right now. Contact in that first pack. I didn't even catch who it was. I was watching Johnny. It was Tooker and Cutlip. It was who it was.
I laugh because I'm listening in on the driver's chat, and Ryan Gable is trying to tell this lead pack what you've been saying for about 10 laps, David. It is time to single out and not let this second pack catch us. And they're not listening to him, David.
Well, some of us, Ryan and I have drafted together in these cars and in a number of cars a lot. We have very similar views on how to win these races, and I think he's won more than I have, but it's at the same time, man. This is how you do it. This is how you have to do it. And this second group, I think 2 wide is okay. They'll maintain it 2 wide, but if they go 3 wide anymore, I think they're in significant trouble. Of allowing that second pack to catch up to him. That is. Sure.
Ryan Gable, you talk about being a winner, 5-time winner in the Cup Series, but it's been since Coda in 2024A, which was like the 2nd or 3rd race of that season since he has won a race. So Daytona 500 would be a good way to snap that drought.
Yeah, I even mean just I know Gable's won plate races before. I've raced with him in races in which he's won plate races before. A quick look at that second pack, but we're back on Gable. The second pack now being led by Johnny Thomas. They did pick him up and are using Johnny to push forward.
That's Carlos Costa.
And Cale Pocock.
Cale Pocock.
So a crash out of that second pack. It might have been a third pack.
No, this is a completely separate. Ooh. That's tough.
And no caution flag for this either.
Just doesn't catch him square.
And Zach Rogers as well.
They all 3 of them get collected. That's got to be frustrating, especially for Zach Rogers, because he's sitting there thinking, all right, well, we're not going to be able to do anything on our own. We're just going to try to stick together until a pack catches us that we can latch onto, and then they wreck in front of you and you get collected. That's, I mean, you talk about adding insult to injury.
Very frustrating. Carlos had such a good run on Monday in the, I believe it's the Revless Photography Xfinity Series still, and he very nearly had a chance to win that race, and he definitely wanted a better showing today. I know that for sure. It's just a tough bump. Kale's new to this series, one of the rookies that I mentioned, trying to learn these cars, and ultimately a slightly bad bump draft, trying to do a little bit too much, I think, from a spot of desperation. When you're that far off the pack, you're trying to do maybe everything you can a little too much, I'll say. But I would say, and also a good deal of misfortune not to get a caution flag there. You really probably could have gotten that caution flag from those cars sideways on the track. This group has...
Yeah.
Go ahead, Zach. I think you're going to say what I'm going to say.
Hey, Ty McIntosh pushing Scott Crump out here. This group has started racing again. I don't know if we're going to get Professor Gavel back on the voice chat here shortly, but lots of dicing as they're approaching Zach Rogers' wounded machine here. And yeah, it's inside of 3 seconds now for that second pack. And honestly, I'm saying 3 seconds to the leader. They're only 2 seconds off of Ethan Stanley at this point.
Something happened in that second pack that dropped a couple of them out of it. Ray Bracey's no longer in that second pack. All right, let's see what the deal was there. Oh, Bracey blinked.
That'll do it.
Blinked out, wound up way off the back of the pack. So disappointing for Ray Bracey. He'll be hoping for a caution flag. He'll no longer be caught back up. Nick Delicato just about losing it there.
Yeah, I think both him and Jesse Racimus went for the same move at the same time. Fortunately, not an incident there.
We haven't been describing the racing going on in this first pack, because I think both of our views. Tate Lytle's on the apron back here in the second pack.
Back there.
That's the third pack, actually, is Nick Massey's going to go take the race lead away from Jonathan Cutlip with help from Gavin Hibbs. This first pack they've done so much racing, and I don't think there's any singular driver to blame in this group. Just a kind of a group mindset of, we've got to have the lead of this group. That's allowing the second group to make inroads, catch them completely. Johnny's almost within drafting range.
They're almost there. It's only got to be a lap or two more like this, and it's got to be a whole new ball game.
Yep. Johnny, and just to clarify, it's Johnny, Ryan Scholl, Josh Adams, Campbell, Jordan Owens. Cars to 26 cars. There's another group just behind. We saw them getting squirrely on the back straightaway. They are still making up some ground. That does include Ethan Burrell, Tate Lytle, Michael Goodman, Michael Hosack, Dusty Dewar, Chad Frankenfield. So a whole group of cars that includes several big hitters, favorites, guys you'd expect to be running at the front of this race, all rejoining the front pack in the fight for the win here momentarily.
And this time by, the field will see the cross flags halfway through the Rev Limit Workshop Daytona 500. Who will be the leader at halfway remains to be seen. Right now, Nick Massey up front as they make their way out of turn number 4. And I think he's going to be able to stay in front of Jonathan Cutlip. Tyler Fode's got the run, but he's not going to get there in time. So Nick Massey, your halfway leader here in the Daytona 500.
Oh, Cutlip's almost ended up alongside Massey there. Just as I was going to say, pretty solid recovery drive there from Nick Massey. Was a lap down early in this race due to, I believe, the same blinking problem that plagued his teammate Ray Bracey. So he's recovered nicely. Here's hoping the other car that's suffered from that can recover as well. They've put a half second back on Johnny Thomas in this group. Johnny jumped to the outside so that Ryan Schuld could get some air in that nose. Hopefully Johnny doesn't lose off the back of this draft. That's certainly something that could happen.
I think he's good. I think he'll be all right. It's definitely a little bit further back than he wants to be, but I think he's still within draft range of a Leighton Norgard.
I don't know. I don't think Johnny's got it. I think Johnny's lost the draft. I would not have jumped out. Even if I would have said, Schuld, you got to drop back, man. I'm not jumping up there. That's a tough spot to be in. Because you almost have to side draft the last couple of cars and slow them up to get your slot in line, or have somebody open a spot for you in that line. But all that shuffling in the line has effectively, it's effectively ruined their run. They have really surged back forward now, and to the point that I think they're 100% going to catch this group now. So I think Schuld was definitely hindering them with the water temperature. The problem is Johnny's now not going to be a benefactor of it.
No, he's in that third pack now. And Justin Fortner had to drag the brake a little bit to get him to latch on there.
Yeah, tough spot for Johnny Thomas. Something that, I think it's a mistake that you make when you're newer to this car. I know Johnny's not newer to this car, but that's it's an easy thing to have happen. That works usually. The Xfinity car works. Trucks, it works. You just get in behind somebody, the air picks you up, and you accelerate and you go. It's just not how this next gen car works. And I certainly feel like I would have made that mistake in that spot. It's just a tough break for Johnny Thomas. Here we go. Professor taking 3 wide.
Well, the pack is there now. We can stop with the pleasantries. It's time to go racing, I'm afraid.
Yep. And this whole group that worked so hard to get back to the pack has found their way, and they will now contend for stage points here in stage 2. I believe it's lap 130 that will be stage 2. I believe that before that we have a pit stop to take place.
Let's see. Last pit stop was 74. So yeah, we were probably about 10-ish laps away, if that.
You wouldn't know it from looking at this pack. You wouldn't know it. These guys have gotten super racy. They clearly did not like running single file. And they're bouncing off the wall.
Costa bailed to the apron there.
Heads up move by Carlos to get to the apron and avoid that being further calamity. It's not going to help his race, but it does prevent a big crash from occurring, and that's something that all the drivers prefer. Nick Massey leading this Daytona 500 with help from Tyler Fody, Ethan Stanley, Nick Indelicato. Josh Adams has risen to 5th. Ryan Gable, Jeff Green, Gavin Higgins, Jonathan Cutlip, and Matthew Weeks, the top 10. This first pack is officially 25 cars deep. That second pack, watching them dice and slice, has also been catching them. And that includes everybody to 34th place Johnny Thomas.
Meanwhile, Ryan Gable now leading that bottom lane. He's got Jonathan Cutlip behind him. And then, is that Matthew Weeks' third car? Yes, it is Matthew Weeks in that 11 car, third car in the line on the bottom.
Nick Massey heading to the bottom to get in front of Ryan Gable and let that 0-1 Hucks machine push him towards the lead. Ryan saw that he actually fell back a little bit there too during the overtake of that second group. Saw that things are going to get racy and has decided to be aggressive of his own right and work his way up into the top 5. Now he'll jump up in front of teammate Tyler Fody. Massey tried to go with him. Could not get that done. Ryan Gable towards the race lead.
And this is a lot of racing here, like you say, as we get closer and closer to these pit stops, and we'll see how this all plays out. Obviously, everybody is taking the notes from the last time around, right? What worked, what didn't work. Did I have a good breaking point for that pit entry? Did I leave something on the table? Did I overcook it? Who am I pitting around? One thing to keep in mind, we saw it in particular with Dustin Dewar. If you're one of those guys who qualified from about 35th on back, there's a good chance your pit stall is near the entrance side of pit road. You kind of want to be on the left-hand side entering pit road if you're going to have that early pit stall. You can't be entering over by the yellow cone on the right-hand side. You've got to be there on the left and make people enter to your right-hand side if they're going to pull alongside you so that you can get to your pit stall.
Absolutely right. I think that's one of the things. Oh, Kevin Higgins just put Chris right in the wall. They're going to make a wreck on the back straightaway. We are going to get a caution flag. Ethan Burrell dodges out of the way of Gavin Higgins. Almost a big incident there. It ultimately ends up being a 2-car incident on the back straightaway. Gavin Higgins and Chris Wright. Wright took Higgins 3 wide up top. Higgins moved up in front and was not clear. The 9-car was there to my eye. Yeah, looks like that's exactly what happened. Chris able to, Gerald Campbell's going to get another piece of the wreck. Just barely gets into that 13 car, but it's going to be Ethan Burrell that makes the big move here to get around Gavin Higgins. Woo, right there.
And, all these drivers taking a collective sigh of relief, not just for missing the wreck, but just getting a chance to breathe after that long green flag run where we were closing in on a second pit stop. And here's Ethan Burrell's view. Probably wasn't expecting that last, the car just kept sliding down the track, and ultimately Ethan had to make a little bit more of an evasive maneuver than he was expecting.
Good dodge, though, for Ethan Burrell. It could have been a race ender for sure. As we watch, we'll hit pit stops, then we'll hit a commercial break, and we'll get back to it with our ad reads before the restart here. But on board with Tate Lytle, who took the very evasive maneuver to go all the way down to the very bottom of the apron, bounced through the no longer existent grass on the back straightaway here at Daytona.
Field coming to pit road now.
Yeah, that took away all the drama from that green flag pit stop, but this pit stop will set up the stage run here. Ethan Stanley overshot his box. A lot of guys taking tires. Gable Fody out first. Massey Cutlip, I think that'll be your top 4. And Delicato 5th. Big break for Ray Bracey, that keeps him on the lead lap. Big break for, I believe, Brett Jones. He'll be getting the lucky dog in this one. Tally issued to the 13 car Gavin Higgins, and we'll step aside for a commercial break here.
Since 2010, race fans have had one burning question. When will the Xfinity Series return to Worldwide Technology Raceway? You asked, NASCAR delivered. On Saturday, September 6, 2025, the magic is back. The track that launched the legendary careers of Harvick, Busch, Keselowski, Edwards, and Earnhardt Jr. is now ready to write that next chapter. We're going to introduce you to a new crop of future champions and Hall of Famers. And in the process, we'll create more of the greatest moments in racing history. NASCAR Weekend 2025, the NASCAR Cup Series Championship Playoffs, the Confluence Music Festival, and now 250 miles of the NASCAR Xfinity Series. 2 incredible races, 1 challenging track, a 3-day party of epic proportions. Go to www.raceway.com and lock in your weekend racing and camping packages for as little as $20.
All right, you're watching the Belly Up Sports Cup Series. Belly Up Sports is the internet sports bar, sports commentary via podcasts, forums, and articles on topics ranging to nearly every sport. Not your usual sports site. Check them out on X or at bellyupsports.com. This is the Rev Limit Workshop Daytona 500. Rev Limit Workshop is bringing you this race, your go-to for pulsating designs at unbeatable prices. Need a logo or a promo? Get yours for just $5. Want a full racing scheme that stands out? It's only $15. Contact them at X to get your premium custom scheme today. Sponsors for the premier sponsors for 2025A are Blue Egg Marketing and Worldwide Technology. Worldwide Technology, we've shown you their wonderful ads. Blue Egg Marketing, rev up your business with Blue Egg, your marketing pit crew. Turbocharge your lead generation with experienced drivers that can navigate the competitive track to connecting with your customers. With Blue Egg, you're always in a pole position, leading your brand toward victory lane. Don't spin your wheels, accelerate success with Blue Egg, fueling small businesses to win big. Those are our sponsors for tonight, Zach.
Field doubled up. We'll be taking the 1 to green this time by Ryan Gable after winning that race off pit road. Leads the way. Tyler Fody will join him on the front row for this restart.
Lake Norman 1-2. Nick Massey, Jonathan Cutlett pushing those two Chevrolets right here. Pace car is off. We are back underway with just 18 laps until stage number 2 concludes.
Have to imagine after the way we saw stage 1 end that these 18 laps are going to get pretty intense.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think you're going to see some very wild moves. I would not be surprised if we wad up a few vehicles here. David Tooker's taking Ethan Stanley 3 wide. Well, started off, but there's 3 wide deep in the field as well. Tate Lytle, Scott Crump, they worked 3 wide. Cutlip up the track. Did he hit the wall?
I don't think so, but that was, boy, a big move there to shut off that outside lane, and now Cutlip is stuck in the middle.
Yeah, it just did not work. That big, one of the things that I learned from my duel, you can't make any of those big sudden movements. You got to be real smooth with it. Cutlip jerked to the wheel, got up to the top of the track. That did not work out for him. He ends up in the middle lane, falls all the way back, well outside the points here for stage 2.
Well, he'll have some time to try and get back up there, and he has found a little bit of help in the form of Ethan Stanley, Scott Crump, and now Ty McIntosh and Jordan Owens, and one more car. I think that's Seth Rawls. Oh, they're in contact! They're wrecking!
Ty.
Justin Fortner's around.
Caution's not out yet.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to come out.
Fortner stopped on the racetrack. I mean, this is where we should be able to have our admins throw a yellow right here. I mean, that's a big wreck that should really be a caution flag.
Well, that it is not, unfortunately. So we'll continue on here, and that's going to be a tough break for all those cars that were either involved or checked up for that incident. It looks like Mark Rebelis has got a meatball, so that's going to take a huge hit for car 96, and he's going very slowly on the apron, about 55 miles per hour on the backstretch.
Rebelos got involved in that where Cutlip. Ethan Stanley was back there near that wreck as well. Ended up having to get checked up, woed up for it. Johnny Thomas lost the pack due to this. Ethan Burrell. A lot of misfortune that just took a whole lot of guys out of the battle for stage points here.
Yeah, I mean, that's whittled down this front group to about 19 cars. They're working around Kyle Hanshaw now. Talk about a night that goes from bad to worse. He was already a couple of laps down.
If I can get a description of what happened for you guys. Looks like Ty McIntosh and Michael Goodman made a little bit of contact there. Wound up spinning Justin Fortner out. Ty got into the wall into Gavin Hibbs. Jordan Owens almost spun out but didn't, and everybody behind them checked up and it didn't pile in. And that's why there was no caution flag, because despite the couple of cars spinning, no one ended up stopped on the racetrack or wrecked. So iRacing deemed it clean. We continue on.
Up front, Blake Reynolds getting out front with the push from Nick Massey.
Reynolds, Massey, Josh Adams there as well. And Jeff Green in the 2 car. Jeff and Adams, both guys part of that second group that made up all that time on the lead group in that last run, and were able to get into this fight for the stage points with 12 to go here before we award those stage points. They'll no doubt be looking for some of those, especially Jeff, since he wasn't even able to contend for them last Wednesday. Ended up missing that duels race. How about a new name up entering into the top 5 here? Guy that was also with Josh Adams, Jeff Green in that second pack. That's Ryan Schold in that 4 car. Guy who was really strong last year at Daytona, very nearly won that iteration of the 500. Working with his teammate Justin Fortner. Fortner obviously wound up in that incident on the front straightaway, but Schold able to find himself up here in 6th spot, definitely in position for some stage points, and positioning himself well for the stretch run here.
Here in the next lap or two, you're going to see kind of a couple of the bigger losers from that incident. Most of the cars involved were able to kind of group together, at least try to salvage some kind of pace by working together. You're going to see Justin Fortner and Johnny Thomas here in the next lap or two as these leaders catch them, and they're both kind of on their own here, completely separate from every group of cars on the racetrack.
Yep. It's tough because those guys checked. Johnny checked for the wreck. Fortner was caught up in the wreck. So, they're going to go a lap down. Just going to have to fight your way back. We've seen other guys fight their way back. We've seen the caution flags fly. So, these guys are just going to have to keep on going as Gavin Hibbs makes a pit stop. That car is pretty severely damaged at this point. Unfortunate for the driver of the 95 car.
Gavin Hibbs will easily go a lap down here as he is on pit road as the leaders go by.
Battling up front, Adams pushing Nick Massey on the bottom. David Tooker pushing Blake Reynolds up top. Tyler Fody there, and Justin Fortner stays on the bottom of the racetrack, allows those drivers to move to the middle and top around him. See if Fortner can hang on to this pack, but even just that act of drafting around Justin Fortner allowed Blake Reynolds and David Tooker to clear to the bottom and move down in front of Nick Massey and Josh Adams. That opens up the top lane for Tyler Fody and Jesse Racimus to draft through. And they are now coming up on Johnny Thomas.
Oh, who blinked? Was that Fody that blinked?
Didn't see a blink from Fody. I assume the driver's chat is the one. Oh, Tooker's going to move on to the bottom. Huge save by David Tooker. Everybody streams to the outside to avoid. Everybody gives each other some running room around Johnny Thomas and David Tooker. That could have been a disaster for this front pack that has dwindled down to just 21 cars. They really could have wrecked it and brought everyone right back into the race.
And to illuminate what I'm guessing you heard from Dave, the conversation has been nonstop since that incident about whether or not it should have been a caution. So, look, well, okay, but besides that, these drivers can't focus if they're running their mouths. I'm just gonna be real blunt about it. I understand the frustration. Certainly, you heard David Westergreen's point of view that it should have been a caution. There's your blinker. It's Blake Reynolds. I wasn't going crazy. But at a certain point, you have to let it go and talk about it after the race and put your head down and go to work. There's no... If you've argued for 10 minutes now and nothing's changed, spoiler alert, nothing's going to change. So put your head down, make the best of the situation, drive the race cars. And I think that may have even been a contributing factor in what you saw there. I don't see how anyone can focus when it's been just non-stop vocal activity in the chat for 10, 15 minutes now.
Yeah, I would advise leave the complaining. I'll do plenty of complaining for you guys. I'll make the points on the broadcast like we want to see. Hey, that should have been a caution. Let me say that. I'll be happy to say that. We can vocalize our opinions with zero effect on the race, but with lots of eyes later, and more attention later. I think complaining about it in the race isn't going to help you because it's not going to be a caution. I'm hoping that we can work this rule in at some point in the future, which is why I said what I said. Because it is a rule that we need to have. We have very good admins. We have...
I've argued for it for years. And
if you need to define it, I think Chris Wright and I have discussed this at length. His view is, well, if the admin throws a yellow for something that wasn't a yellow, then people will complain. And if they don't throw the yellow for something that should have been a yellow, they'll complain. So what's the point of, taking it out of iRacing's hands? And to that point, I say, hey, it's fair. But it's...
To that point, I say they do it in NASCAR, too.
Right.
That's the nature of, unfortunately, making balls and strikes calls in any sport.
Right. It's officiating. You let the officials make the call. If the official says that's a caution, yellow flag's out, then it's a caution. Doesn't matter what I thought it should have been. Yellow flag's out. If you believe the official is more accurate than iRacing, which at Daytona, Talladega, and then a few tracks with big aprons, Atlanta comes to mind, Darlington comes to mind, Auto Club comes to mind. A couple of those tracks, the officials will 100% be more accurate than iRacing, guaranteed. So let them make the call. We have really good officials here. We can do it.
We might want to keep a race control guy for more than a year, though, before we worry about that.
Yeah.
There is a reason we have a new race control guy every year.
So we've had Professor Gavel earlier in the race. We just got Reverend David Westergreen discussing race control policies. We still have 74 laps to go here in the Daytona 500. I have a feeling we are going to get a caution at some point in those 74 laps, and all of this is going to be moot.
Right, and that's where the complaining on the driver's end just can't be there. Initial reaction, I get it. Right, should have been a caution. Done. We're moving on.
There's a whole lot of people on the screen right there that it didn't ruin their race.
Right, so I'm sure Justin Wadsworth doesn't mind running fourth right now, knowing that he's only got 21 cars in the pack that he's got to fight against to win this Daytona 500 at the moment. Not singling him out, just use the first car on my screen.
Sure, I believe it.
Our defending champion. Come on, he's up to the top lane now. He's going for the lead. And Johnny Thomas is working the middle lane. Johnny wants to get his lap back the old-fashioned way. And I love it. Or cause a caution trying.
Ooh, 3 wide? Yeah, okay. That'll work.
For Wadsworth up to the top in front of Blake Reynolds. Massey's the one hung in the middle. Tyler Fode surges forward on the bottom. Help from Indelicato, Racimus, Jeff Green, and Gerald Campbell. Hey, shout out to Gerald. Running in the top 5. He dropped in the booth before the race to give us good luck, and we wished him well as well. He got involved in a couple of those wrecks, but the Donald the Eagle doesn't seem to be having any issues.
Donald looks a little dirty.
Yeah, that's the way.
That's the best part of 500 miles. So getting all the rubber and grime, especially on a white race car. Like, don't get me wrong, especially having Ray Bracey as a teammate who paints lots of beautiful race cars. I've grown to love the bright, vibrant colors that stand out on a broadcast, like his green and yellow, or Jonathan Cutlet's highlighter yellow, even Tyler Fode's purple. The Tate Lytle the days gone by kind of cream color. There you see Tim to the outside of Gerald Campbell right now in that car 56. But man, a dirty, filthy, nasty, grimy white car after 500 miles just does something for me.
Two of them are drafting up at the top right in front of that cream 56 car. That's Justin Wadsworth and Dusty Dewar. Ryan Gable's seen enough out of this top lane. There's a lot of white-nosed cars in this front pack right now. Gerald's the one getting shuffled into the middle here.
Stage winner.
This is the stage. Tyler Fode gets it. We just completely disregarded it with all the caution talk. Yeah, that was stage winner Tyler Fode. No build-up on the broadcast at all. That's our bad. Jeff Green's going to get third in the stage, fourth in the stage. The Fode, Racimus, Indelicato, Wadsworth, Green, the top 5. Dewar, Schuld, Lytle, Campbell, Seth Rawls, the top 10. Those are the stage point getters. That's 10 for first. On back, we don't do the playoff point system. Indelicato got third in the stage. He is now last in this pack. So that's just how fast it can change.
Man, how about that surge from the outside, and then Justin Wadsworth cuts right down to the bottom, and that just completely stalled out Dustin Dewar on the outside.
It's going to give Dusty some air, though, and I think that was going to be sorely needed. So I imagine that outside line will start to surge back forward. They are 3 wide behind. Back around David Hooker, where Nick Massey got shuffled to the outside. Up front, it's single file between Justin Wadsworth, Tyler Fode, Jesse Racimus. Dustin Dewar jumps to the bottom. Tate Lytle up top. Chris Wright looking outside of Tate Lytle. Things are getting a little bit hairy up near the front. Massey got into the wall. While he's leading, let's throw a quick shout to St. Jude's. Partnered up with last year's champion Justin Wadsworth and have jumped on board with that group over at Lake Norman Motorsports in that 6 car. And Wadsworth running for a good cause this year. I don't know if he's donating some money or what, working with St. Jude's in that partnership, but it's a great paint scheme. It's a good cause. So it's just worth shouting out because that's a new partnership that's come to Elite this season, and hats off there to Justin Wadsworth, Lake Norman Motorsports, especially after winning that championship last year. To be able to go out and grab a new partner is pretty cool.
Definitely a great cause. I do have to, with tongue firmly planted in cheek, claim copyright infringement or gimmick infringement. A 6 car with helping kids on the car. I feel like I've seen that done before, but no, that's awesome, and love to see that from our defending series champion here in the Belly Up Sports Cup Series.
And Wadsworth definitely arriving into this season with, I think, a little bit of a new sense of confidence,
yes.
Right? A gigantic confidence boost after that race at Richmond last year where, really the final 2 races where he scores the walk-off, stay out on a late pit cycle walk-off victory at Kansas, I believe, and then goes to complete the win with, might have been Vegas, but then goes to complete the championship with a great run at Richmond. And just an awesome story for a guy who came off a Rookie of the Year just the year before, but really wasn't particularly close to winning a race that season, and ultimately, found himself up at the front in a lot of our crown jewel events. Daytona 500 wasn't really one of them, but the Southern 500 he finished second. He was up front at the Bristol Night Race. The guy was really, really close to winning all season, and when it really mattered most, he scored a win, got the victory, the elusive first one. It's the hardest one to get, and then from there, he was able to put together just such a remarkably excellent race at Richmond to capture that championship. And Scott Crump put a whooping on the field, but it was in no large part thanks and help to Justin Wadsworth. This
Now,
jumbled everything up.
Yeah, here you see this is Johnny Thomas is not leading this race. He is back on the lead lap now, but now he's about to not be. He's trying to be on the lead lap, and then the battle for the lead is the 22 behind him and the 9. And oh, by the way, they're catching, I believe that's Ty McIntosh.
It is.
Who, yeah, and that's going to make that. Well, I was going to say that's going to be the battle for the free pass if Johnny were to go back a lap down, but he falls all the way to the rear of this pack, so that's not going to be much of a battle.
No, not at the moment. Johnny's in a really good spot. He's gotten back on the lead lap the old-fashioned way. He's got to stay up there. That's pretty much all Johnny can do at this point. And on the bottom, you got two South Shore Racing Fords. Tandem drafting. Chris Wright pushing Nick Massey towards the race lead. Wadsworth helping. Johnny's a little bit squirrely with that push from Josh Adams. That outside lane starting to die back a little bit.
And man, this is such a tough situation because 100% Johnny has to try this, right? He's got the speed, he's got the pace, he's got to try and stay out front and try to stay on the lead lap outright in case a caution does come out. Because then, especially with the shorter cautions at a Daytona, it's such a huge benefit to be able to pit with the leaders instead of taking that wave around and maybe not being able to get back on pit road before the restart, right? He desperately needs to keep this lead lap if he can, but it's going to be so hard when all these guys are racing for the lead and he's just kind of, I don't want to say in the way. He's not doing anything wrong, but they are he is an obstacle to the guys racing for the lead right now.
You know what's funny, Zach, is you weren't with us for last year's Daytona 500. We had a driver leading from very last on the lead lap the entirety of that long green flag run that I talk about just about every time. Matthew Weeks pretty much quote led unquote the whole way. Is Kyle Hanshaw. That's another car that's not on the lead lap. Kyle Hanshaw's 3 laps now.
Well, that's not going to be popular there. That he was a lap down and threw himself from the sucker hole right in front of that outside lane, and Matthew Weeks had to take evasive action, and now Kyle Hanshaw's got to be right in front of him again. Matthew Weeks is probably seething right now.
I believe that's David Tooker in that 19
you're right.
car.
It is David Tooker.
Absolutely correct. I don't believe David Tooker's going to be terribly thrilled with Kyle Hanshaw right there. But it's not. What's funny? It's not the first time in this race that we've seen a car leading the race that is not on the lead lap. And Johnny Thomas working with Tate Lytle right now. Those two very good friends in real life. Long repertoire of drafting together. I think Tate is not going to make that same move we've seen now. Johnny, Chris Wright, a few others make to the bottom of the racetrack. I think Tate will stay with Johnny Thomas right here and push him for as much as he can. Without damaging the race of that 56 car. But hey, shout out Tate Lytle.
Is Tooker about to jump to the bottom here and hang Kyle out? That'd be a real petty but appropriate move here, I think.
Yep.
See you, driver.
Sure is.
Oh, I hate when it's predictable.
It worked out for Hanshaw though. He's going to slot up in the
had
top.
A gap, and he had a hole in front of Michael Hossack. It all worked out, but boy, I could feel that one in my bones.
Yep, that was a perfect opportunity for David Tooker to show his displeasure. I don't want you drafting me. Yeah, you made some moves in front of me that I didn't really appreciate, so I'm going to not take your push. Kind of I'll call it a middle finger without displaying it, just a...
Right. No yelling and shouting. No intentional wreck or even contact. Just have fun.
Nick and Delicato got a push from teammate Seth Rawls. They will drop to the bottom of the racetrack out from behind this outside lane that was kind of helping Johnny Thomas along. And Delicato trying to go back up to the race lead. Nick Massey sees a hole, goes to that top lane in front of Blake Reynolds. This 21 car group's really dicing and slicing. Massey took that run to the middle again. I don't know if that one's going to pay off there for Nick. He might be hung out to dry down in the middle lane.
And one thing to keep in mind, especially we don't have any of those pesky stages to think about this time. I think we're still probably a few laps away from the stops proper, but you're probably going to start seeing some of those guys matriculate towards the bottom lane. You're already hearing in the driver chat some of the communication. How many laps do you have? Well, how about you? Well, when are you planning on pitting? Guys trying to work out when they're going to pit, because especially with the field getting broken up by that incident that did not bring out a caution, a lot of guys are racing around guys that they haven't been around the last couple of green flag pit stop opportunities. Even though that second one didn't come to fruition, we were getting close, and so it's some of that communication already ongoing.
Yep, it's time to begin thinking about that, and it's worth noting we're not. I don't believe going to be in the window of one more.
No.
I think we're going to have two to go from here, which you're going to want to run that as long as you can, but that last stop's going to come with like 10 laps to go. It's really going to be a short stop if we do go green from here.
Wait, are you saying they would have one more stop after this, or two more stops after this?
No, two more, including this upcoming stop.
Okay. Yeah. I think. Yeah, we're still, like you say. Then it would open up. Do you split that second run in half? Because, like you say, it's.
I would not. I would run it full.
Run it dry. I would tend to agree with you, but I think if you're in that second pack, you've got to do something. You've got to do something different. But then that puts you at an even greater risk of losing a lap, and that just would really ruin your Christmas. I don't know.
I think that the solution is clear from here. If you can't go for one more stop, which I don't believe they can, presuming they have to pit the next five or so laps, I don't believe they can make it one more stop, even if you save in the pack. You've got to try to run it dry, come down pit road with 10-5 to go, top it off, and go. And presume the caution's going to come out is what I would do, because it's going to start to get racy once we complete this green flag pit stop.
For the first time in the 2025A Belly Up Sports Cup Series season, you know what I say about this, David?
There's no math.
I was told there would be no math.
I don't remember ever telling him that.
I know. You keep saying you were told. Who's telling you this? Because there's math every time.
I'll never reveal my sources.
Up front, it is Nick and Delicato leading laps on that bottom lane, pushed by teammate Seth Rawls. Up top, Johnny Thomas not on the lead lap. Tate Lytle giving him a boost to try and keep that 83 car on the lead lap, on the tail end of the lead lap, in hopes that he will be able to get a lap back should the caution flag wave. Zach, I thought of something.
Oh boy.
I think
okay.
The Lake Norman Chevys, Tyler Fode, Ryan Gable, Justin Wadsworth in this lead pack are saving fuel. I think they're saving fuel. They've dropped all the way to the back. That's three guys who have been pretty aggressive, run up near the front of the field. They are looks to me like they're running half throttle, quarter throttle. They're saving fuel. I think they're trying to make this thing on one more stop.
Well, we'll see.
That has 3.5 gallons.
The last pit stop was at 110. So that would be, can you go 45 laps twice? We've been close to that. It might be doable.
It is right on the border, because I think 45 laps is the number I understand is the max. But Tyler Fode has done nothing this run, and he is well off the back of the pack right now.
In that second run on the graphic, you see some 43s and 44s.
They only need to save 2 laps, right?
Right, and to be fair, that first stint shortened by a caution, the third stint shortened by a caution, so those were not maximum numbers. Man, I don't know. We'll see. If you can get it I think you absolutely have to stretch it to 45 to go this time to give yourself a shot. I think asking for 46 or 47 on the final run is a bridge too far.
Right.
If you can make it to what would be lap 155 this time, then it's the meme, right? So you're saying there's a chance.
Yep. As they come up on Ty McIntosh once again to put that 35 car another lap down, and we've seen issues with lapping cars over the course of this week with the various series. Ty hits the apron though, doesn't want to get this field squirrelier than it needs to be. Gerald Campbell drops to the bottom of the racetrack. I do wonder if that's a potential move to get ready to go to pit road. Oh, Gerald got spun by Delgado. They're gonna wreck big. That might be the caution flag. Oh, no, it's not. Jeff Green's in the wall. Abbott's in the wall.
Oh, they're still wrecking. Who was that just hit the wall?
They got to get going. The caution flag is still not out.
That's, here we go again.
Dusty Dewar and Tate Lytle
I don't know, man.
All right.
Jeff Green still against the outside wall. He's got to try to limp that car across pit road, but he's got to do it without running into anyone. Oh, he's right in front of the pack. Oh! Oh!
We should probably be on Jeff.
Yeah, we've got to get on Jeff Green. We've got to get on Jeff Green. I believe that was Jonathan Cutlet.
Oh, man.
I could not tell.
And all this could have been avoided with the yellow flag, man.
Boy. So, yeah, forward. I'm not worried about what started the wreck right now. We can look at that later. Speed it up, because he's going like 3 miles per hour here. So he's got to try to get across the track to get to pit road. All right, real speed here.
I mean, yeah,
right, your second car in line right here is going to be the one that hit.
Oh, my goodness.
And he might have actually collected other cars on the way up. I think that was Cutlet. Oh.
Yeah, that's so tough.
Well, that's going to be Exhibit A for the meeting afterwards to lobby for admin yellows. And there you see Jonathan Cutlet with the significant damage. His race is pretty much ruined. Now, what that does do, if you were one of those guys trying to stretch it, and I was looking for an opportunity to share some info I got in my text messages, that is indeed the case. Yeah, that's you had to check up for that wreck. That helps.
Oh. Well, so let's try to re-rack it. Dusty Dewar and Tate Lytle are 5 seconds ahead.
6 seconds ahead of everybody. I think we did get some pit stops in all of that. I believe we're about to get a lot more. Yes, yeah, a lot from that second pack especially. And here come these guys all to pit road.
Yep, this is the group right here. I mean, if Tate and Dusty can get through pit road, get sorted up with Johnny, and get in just in tandem kind of draft all their way back through, they might be okay. Now, Chris Wright, Ryan Gable, Racimus, Reynolds, everybody who stayed out right here, they're going to be pitting with 45 to go. We believe they can make it in.
It's got to be tight. It's got to be tight. Yeah, so, but that's the hope, is to break it down the middle there. So we'll see if they're able to do that.
Wadsworth said pitting in, so I believe this whole group's gonna pit in this time. Let's see how many of them go. I think all of them are gonna come down pit road here. Chris Wright's gonna stay out one more lap. So does Blake Reynolds, David Tucker, and Ryan Schold.
Let the games begin.
Yeah, I think the rest of these guys can definitely go full song the rest of the way. Check on whether or not Dusty Dewar did not get latched onto Tate Lytle and Johnny Thomas, so that I think that's going to spell the end of that run for Dusty and Tate. The question becomes, can Chris get to and Blake Reynolds here?
Let's see, the other thing here, it's going to be interesting where they come back out after this pit stop, because it's one thing to say 45 laps of fuel in a pack of 20 cars. it's another thing to do it in a pack of 4 cars. And so they're going to want to get hooked up with somebody when they get back on track. But this field has been split up 6 ways to Sunday. I don't know. We'll see if they're able to.
Yeah, I mean, I think Tate Lytle is a sitting duck here. I think anybody who is going to be hunting, hunting the lead, the lead of this thing, they're really going to need to be in a pack. You really can't be leading one of these big trains. I think that's the spot that's going to be the most burn on the fuel. So you're going to have a bunch of big trains of cars singled out trying to catch up to Tate Lytle, who is right here, going to be the race leader once the pits cycle through. He's going around that group that just pitted right there, Wright, Reynolds, Scholl, David Tooker. 45 is right on the limit. Some of those guys pitted with 46 to go. Tate's one of the guys who pitted with 46 to go. You might have to save a little bit to get all the way to 46. And if that's the case, Tate's in trouble here. He needs to be in a pack. All right. Looks like it's fully cycled.
So here we are. Tate Lytle is the leader, not Johnny Thomas.
Yep.
They are about 3 seconds ahead of the next group, but that is going to dissipate at pretty rapid rate because there are just more cars in that second group from Chris Wright, Blake Reynolds, Justin Wadsworth on back.
So then that group is led all the way back to 16th place. That's Seth Rawls running 16th. That top 16 on your scoring pylon are effectively the cars that can win the race now. Everybody else is kind of hoping for a yellow flag, which, I don't know what we have to do to get one. But, hey. And with that, you've got about 13 cars that are technically, in that slot. And then Johnny Thomas is that last car on the lead lap for 26 spots. So, should we interview Gavin Hibbs? He's been sitting in the waiting room for a little while. I was waiting for things to sort out.
Sure.
See if Gavin's still there. Gavin, it's David in the booth. You got me?
Yeah, I got you.
Yeah, a little wild there for us, so we weren't able to pull you up real quick. But take us through kind of what ended your night.
Yeah, that's. I was just minding my business on the top. I'm just like, okay, just gonna sit on the top line. Just hang out for a bit, see what lane goes where and which hole opens up, and we're gonna take it. And then all of a sudden, I had no time to react. So next thing I knew, I just saw a car sideways in front of me, and then next thing I know, we were stopped on track.
Sorry.
Dave, can we go to the lead on the broadcast here?
Yeah, no, you're good, Zach. Guys talk about the rule and all this and that. I look at it more of just how Daytona works, and we've had this issue every time we come to Daytona since I've been in Cup for the last year. So, I think it's more of the track, not consistently calling yellows automatically through sim. So, but I got my opinion on the rules, but that's a different story.
We got you, Gavin. Any shout outs here for us before we send you off?
Yeah, just Hibbs Designs, obviously my design business, and then Strictly Stock Motorsports. Not the way I wanted for their first race to go in Elite Cup, but we got Kentucky next week, and I feel pretty good there. So shout out to them.
All right, thanks, Gavin, and good luck the rest of the season, buddy.
Yep, thank you guys.
Let's also call up Nick Massey while we are single file and get his thoughts on this. While we have a chance, it's Jesse Racimus leading the way. Dusty Dewar second. They've overtaken Tate Lytle and Johnny Thomas. Chris Wright's third. Then Lytle fourth and Blake Reynolds fifth. Now let's grab.
Whoa!
Is there another incident on track? I don't know what's going on. Ty McIntosh is smoking on pit road.
Hey.
Nick, welcome to the booth, buddy. It's been an adventure. Oh my goodness.
It definitely has a lot of stuff going on out there.
What take us through the thing that ended your night. Looked like it's what ended Jeff's night and maybe some others.
Yeah, I didn't even know what was going on because we were all running pretty good there in that lead pack, and I was following Jeff, teammate, and then all of a sudden they started wrecking underneath us, and then kind of knocked I think I was going to be all right, and then I got hit again, and that kind of broke the left front wheel, and then I was kind of putzing around out there. Couldn't make it down pit road the first time, so I had to continue on, and I couldn't queue up to tell anybody that I was slow, and poor Josh Adams was stuck pushing me for the whole trial, even though I was broke, so it slowed him down. I think it might have made him lose the draft too, so unfortunate, but we got up there, led some laps, almost got some points in the stages, so there's lots of speed there, and working together pretty well there with all the South Shore teammates there.
Sounds good, buddy. Any shout outs for us here before we send you off or before the finish of this race?
Yeah, shout out to you guys on the show. Trying to make you proud, man. I thought we were going to have a shot to win the thing. We're sitting pretty good there coming down to the last pit stop, but unfortunate. But yeah, shout out to Jeff and all the South Shore guys. Hopefully Chris can bring it home for us. I'm not sure how Ray's looking right now. I think he was involved in the other incidents a little far back there, but hopefully somebody from South Shore can bring this thing home for us.
Sounds good, buddy. I agree with you completely. We'll see how it pans out, but yeah, good luck the rest of this season, man. Hated that it went this way for you.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
There's the infield care center. Johnny Thomas and Blake Reynolds running some weaving as this single file line trains through. And
that was one of my exclamations during that interview was, Johnny, I didn't quite catch what exactly happened, so I won't go into too much detail and risk blaspheming anyway, but Johnny somehow ended up against the fence while the leaders, right as that second place on back had caught the leaders, and it was just a very sketchy situation, but then they carried on. And then Ty McIntosh blew up and crashed right as the leaders were approaching the tri-oval. So that, of course, has triggered even more conversation about whether or not we should have admin-induced yellows. And we have our opinions, David. I hope they take a serious look at it. I've been begging and pleading for years as a competitor, and we'll see if this turns to vote. I don't know. We'll see.
It's one of those things where I hate this. It's overshadowing the race. Not to mention, I would argue it's ruining the race. It's taking guys. Absolutely. It's taking guys out of this race that should not have been taken out of it, and it ruining chances for the Daytona 500 win. That really, it's unjust. That they shouldn't have been in this situation to begin with. I mean, all the way back to the very first incident that should have been a yellow. That would have re-racked things, allowed some guys to fix some damage, including Gavin Hibbs, who we just heard from. You push forward to Jeff Green there, and yeah, it's just frustrating, man.
So yeah,
I'm protesting. I'm not showing anything till they shut up.
Well, we're not gonna see the end of the race then.
It's probably true. It's out of hand.
I'm in Dillard's right now looking for some yellow fabric we can maybe stitch into a nice square piece of.
Do they sell like headache medicine? Something like that? Maybe some Goodies headache medicine?
I could pick up some Goodies headache powder for you while I'm
That'd be
here.
good.
Yeah. Okay.
Michael Goodman is running the race. maybe he can supply for you. Goody. Okay. It's fine.
Hold on. I'm looking. He's like not in my list. There he is.
There he is.
I had to go all the way to the bottom.
Oh man, what a night.
if you know, and it's one of those things where if back to our kind of discussion before that, the happy interlude is it's if we're less enthused by all this, it's because we'd rather be talking about a race.
No, but we don't want to talk
rules.
about it. 100%. Way more fun
Not at
when
all.
we're talking about, the battle for the win, the battle, right now there's a really interesting strategy conversation we could be talking about because I talked about it when you had those guys stretch it to 155. You need to be able to link back up with somebody if you're going to be able to save that 45 laps of fuel again. Well, guess what? We do have a couple of those drivers struggling as they pass each other on track, but a guy like Blake Reynolds, a guy like Ryan Schold, Chris Wright, David Tucker, they're in this pack. They're able to kind of play that game. I think that's why you've seen a lot of single file in this pack. The guys that are on the number want to stay on the number. The guys that are behind that number desperately want to catch back up to that number. So everybody's very content to run single file right now because that's the easiest way to save fuel. The only guy not saving fuel right now, that 70 car out front. And I'm sure he's trying. I mean, you look at, let's see, I'll even look at his lap time. Dude, I mean, he's running a 46.87 last time by. The pace of this race has slowed down. Everybody's trying to save that fuel, but it's still hardest when you're leading the race.
Right. You're still burning a little more fuel than everybody who's riding behind you, but even with the pace, an effect of the pace being down right now is Jordan Owens, Matthew Weeks, and Josh Adams are totally making ground on the leaders. I don't know if they'll be able to catch back up, and I definitely am not sure whether they'll be able to make it from here, but they have dropped that gap to 12 seconds. They could see the leaders on their screen now. So, maybe this pace dropping off, it'll be a good thing for the competition later on. But overall, I mean, we'll see. It would likely be a lot more interesting if we weren't forced to deal with some of the other things that have kind of been plaguing this race.
Let's take a moment while we have it, while they're all running single file. If not, I can just read it off my handy-dandy computer screen, David, but are you able to display the 2025A Belly Up Sports Cup Series schedule?
Yes, I can do that.
Let's talk about the 2025A Belly Up Sports Cup Series schedule. There you see it on the right-hand side of the screen. Next week, we go to Kentucky Speedway. And we definitely won't be talking about drafting or anything like that there. Zandvoort with our International Challenge the following week. Then the Brickyard 400. Michigan's always an exciting one. We'll get our first look in the Belly Up Sports Cup Series of the refreshed New Hampshire Motor Speedway on iRacing. Fontana after that. Kern is going to be... Well, let's just say the short tracks are always interesting here in Elite. Sonoma for a dose of road course racing in wine country. The World 600 to wrap up the full-time racing. And then the regular season finale at Talladega before the Roval, Dover, and Atlanta. And to start the playoffs in the first round, the second round North Wilkesboro, Iowa, and Homestead. And then the finale at Las Vegas.
Yeah, it's a good schedule. I think we won't have any problems with the yellow flag being thrown at Kern.
No, we're gonna want to set the yellow flag on fire at Kern. Just make it an enduro race.
Right. So here's the thing that's happening. Our two do-good drivers that were leading this thing, Jesse Racimus and Dusty Dewar, they have decided it is go time. They have pulled out to a somewhat sizable margin. They're effectively going to try to force this group behind to spend a little fuel to catch back up to them. Now, I don't know if Chris Wright, Tate Lytle, Blake Reynolds, Johnny Thomas, they want to spend that fuel. They might need to keep saving. Dewar and Racimus seem to think they're good. They've gassed it up. They're trying to do it. Or neither of them can make it all the way on fuel, and therefore they're going to just try to force the hand of the other drivers. But it doesn't seem to be working thus far.
I don't think you're going to be able to force the. It's you're not going to be able to build up a big enough lead to cancel out the delta of coming down pit road, even for just a second or two of fuel.
Right. I do wonder,
that
though.
Might be, like you say, it might be the only play they have at this point. If they know they can't make it, you might as well try to salvage every position you can. Because at the end of the day, yes, you will win the Daytona 500, but this is the first of, we just went over that schedule, however many, points races in the regular season, 11 races, and you want to maximize every point you can get. So if that's the play you've got to make to maximize those points, off you go. And also, man, I know nobody will believe me when I say this, but if you do get one of those, cautions that are like the Loch Ness monster somehow apparently show up occasionally, then they're in the perfect spot right now.
Yeah, I know. They're certainly working on one. They're working on one really hard right now in the second pack. Chris Wright just about got spun out right as you were saying that by Blake Reynolds. He was all over the place. It opened up the outside for Tate Lytle to get back in front. Wright, I think, is saving fuel, trying to make sure he can make it to the end. Reynolds was not interested in saving fuel. He was trying to bump draft that 9 car, and in so doing, Tate Lytle ended up at the top lane. Wright almost got spun out. This whole second lane checked up a little bit. There's a 4-second gap up now from Tate Lytle up to Racimus and Dewar. So that do-good crew starting to look good. But again, that fuel concern, I just don't know if they have enough fuel to make it all the way.
And that's the thing. I wonder if they're starting to think, well, if they do have enough fuel, we can't just let them run away and leave. Like, what do? This is such a tough spot because already you're dealing with a bit of an inexact science when it comes to the fuel calculators, and no matter whether you use the iRacing built-in one or a third-party program such as Crew Chief or Race Labs, iOverlay, what the list goes on, and I'm gonna forget somebody, and none of them are paying me anyway. So no matter what you're doing, or even if you have a human crew chief helping you do the math, which again I was told there would be none of that, it's so tough in this situation because every lap your fuel burn is changing, the number is updating, and you have absolutely no idea what those numbers are for your competitors unless they're, like streaming on Twitch or something. And I'm pretty sure that's definitely not the case for either Jesse Racimus or Dustin Dewar.
No. No, they're not.
I
they're
say that out of respect and love for both of them, but neither of them are amongst the young bucks here in Elite, shall we say.
No.
Not that there aren't older people that stream, but
those two in particular. Worth noting, the pace of that second pack dropped off so drastically that Jordan Owens, Matthew Weeks, and Josh Adams have caught and overtaken a number of slots in this pack to the point that Owens and Weeks are about to be leading this first pack. That's how drastically things have fallen off in terms of pace for that front group. Up front, Dewar and Racimus continue to lead the way.
And grow that lead. It's nearly 7 seconds at this point. They're trying to prove me wrong on creating the delta right now.
Yep, they're working working hard for it, but I don't know that it matters. I think they're probably not going to be able to make it on fuel. Oh, they're wrecking. Ryan Schold back up in front of the field.
Oh, that is
Yellow
the caution.
Flag is out.
That is the caution. Ryan Schold with a pretty heavy hit into the outside wall. I don't think that's going to be good news for the driver number 4 out of the Little Eagle stable. I see. We'll take a look at the replay here. Yeah, it goes in driver's side first, and I wouldn't mind another look at how that started. It's hard to tell. I feel like Adams is there, and I think he just missed times turning left. Obviously, he wasn't trying to block him. He's just trying to, I think he wanted to get in front there and just didn't have as much of a run as he thought he did. I think it's just a slight but costly misjudgment there from Ryan Schold.
Yeah. It's a tough break, there's been a lot of mental gymnastics in this race. We'll call it a lot of mental.
Gosh, yes.
Yeah, even for us in the booth, it's just been a very difficult race overall, and to the point that mistakes were always probable. And I think that's one of the reasons Dusty Dewar and Jesse Racines were able to make that gamble.
Boy, do they look brilliant right now.
I know. They kept that track position. Now they're going to be right at the front of this field with a very, very good shot to go out and win this Daytona 500 with 20 laps to go for Do Good Motorsports. And that'd be one way to start off this season, I'll tell you what. So I imagine everybody's going to come get a splash of fuel right now. There's going to be green, white checkers. I would come get the splash. It's easy to pass. Get the fuel. Everybody's listening to me. That's good.
Not everybody.
I think there's a lot of guys staying out who are laps down. Jake Scarborough stayed out. He is on the lead lap.
He's on the lead lap. That is your new leader.
One stays out. Maybe two. Michael Hosak also stayed out.
Yep.
Off pit road, the race will be won by Tate Lytle over Matthew Weeks, Dusty Dewar, Justin Wadsworth, and Tyler Fode. It's like Racines burned a little more fuel, winds up ninth off pit road.
So what's going to be interesting? I mean, these cautions help, obviously, Jake Scarborough and Michael Hosek, but then what if we run into some green-white checkers? Because right now you're looking at 47 laps to make it the regulation distance. I think that's fine with this caution. Any more than that is really iffy, I think. We do have a couple of guys in the infield care center, by the way.
I know. Unfortunately for Corey Abbott and Ty McIntosh, we've just not had the time as things kind of ramped up right after we were able to. Even during our interview with Nick Massey, things were ramping up. So let's grab them while we have a chance. I think we are done with kind of our ad reads and commercial breaks. Well, Ty's sharing something to Corey in the thing. We'll let them go. They can enjoy their time in the infield care center. It seems like they're having a better time than we are.
Yeah, dragging up Ty Potty Mouth McIntosh without warning while he's sharing a video feed to Corey Abbott is a recipe for us to get kicked off YouTube. So we'll leave that alone for now. It was a good idea on paper.
Those two are more than welcome to let me know if they're willing to join up and discuss.
Yell at us in the YouTube chat if you are safe to bring to the booth.
So
they're your lap cars just dropped down pit road that you were discussing, and I'm sure they were not thrilled to see Jake Scarborough and Mike Hosek stay out because that took away the wave around potential if they were lined up behind those guys.
Well, Jake Scarborough and Michael Hosek just got a bit of a boost as well because it is no longer 1 to green. Chad extended the caution by a lap, I presume, to allow some folks with various amounts of damage to try and fix that.
And I will say, as soon as the caution came out, he announced they would extend this caution by an extra lap for that express purpose. And I think, considering the circumstances, that's really the best he can do as an administrator of this league. Because, again, you can't change the rules mid-race. We've stated our opinion of what we'd like to see the rules to be, but that does not change what the rules are. And the rules are the admin does not have the ability to throw the yellow flag even if 30 cars were upside down and on fire. So this is the best he could do to kind of mediate some of the displeasure at the moment.
I don't know that that's going to solve any broken feelings or missed races here, but I'm sure Jonathan Cutlip, Nick Massey, Jeff Green, Justin Fortner, Gavin Hibbs would all have something to say about that, as those guys are all retired from this race. But this is the best you can do, and these guys are just going to have to make the most of it at this point, right? And we've got 19 more laps. I think these are about to be 19 chaotic laps, exciting laps. This will be the best part of the race. It's a shame that some of our favorites are not going to be here to run these laps, but these guys can definitely put on a show the rest of the way.
And you're going to have 25 cars on the lead lap at least, depending on if Gerald Campbell and Ryan Schultz are able to get off pit road in time. Gerald Campbell is leaving pit road now. Not sure about Ryan Schultz.
Yep,
is okay.
He's on track now.
So we will have 27 cars on the lead lap for this restart. Completely changes everything because those cars will be packed up. There aren't going to be any more green flag pit stops. And with the exception of maybe the 7.7 and 24, fuel mileage is no longer a concern. This is where it's going to get very, very chaotic.
Yep, this is about to get nuts. I want to give a call to our defending Daytona 500 winner, who has spent the entirety of this race off the draft, and that is Ethan Burrell. He has effectively been bamboozled by everything to this point. All of those checkups resulted in him losing the draft. He's been, in those backpacks focused on dodging wrecks and hoping for yellows. As that incident between Adams and Schultz was called a racing incident. But Ethan Burrell is going to have to come from 22nd on this restart. I think he can do it. He's certainly done it before in this race, but we've seen a lot of passes get made by guys and working through the field very quickly, but that was with where everybody wasn't pushing. I think it's going to be difficult to make passes here in these last 20 laps, but if you dodge the wrecks, it doesn't really matter where you are in this field. You can definitely be in contention by the end of these final 18 laps. And from anybody from Michael Hosak back to Ethan Burrell could win this race at this point.
That extra lap of caution will help the 77 and 24 as far as making it to the end as well.
It's worth noting that the result of this race has already noted that things will change with regards to the yellows moving forward. So that's a good news. Green flag back out. Jake Scarborough and Michael Hosak on the loud pedal. Tate Lytle, Matthew Weeks with full fuel pushing behind. And then it's Dusty Dewar and Justin Wadsworth. Fuel not a concern for anyone but the top two, but even then I think they can make it to the checkered flag from here unless we get overtime.
Mm-hmm.
And Nick Delicato's already in the fence. 3 wide mid-pack. Chad Frankenfield taking him 3 wide. He's got Seth Rawls in tow. On the bottom, it's Scarborough, Lytle, Dewar, Fody. Surging forward. Hosak's lane not going very far at all. Thought Tate Lytle would make a move. He did not. He stays true to the back bumper of Jake Scarborough in the 77, the Duel 2 winner.
Oh, trouble!
Hosak sideways.
Gotta go hard into the inside wall. Is he gonna come back up the track? Maybe not.
I didn't catch who got sent to the inside wall.
That was Racimus.
Jesse. Oh.
And he is parked on pit road right now. I don't know if he blinked out on my screen, but it looks like he kept it into grass and then turned it hard left onto pit road to prevent the caution from coming out. And unfortunately, significant damage for that 70 car. It went head on into the inside wall.
There was bad push from Matthew Weeks. Crushes that 70 car. Blake Reynolds, Tate Lytle, and Matthew Weeks have been dicing it up for the lead. They are now on the top lane trying to get that thing going. Dusty Dewar has pushed Scarborough out to the lead still. This front pack has gotten pretty crazy, but right now it's them Pro Edge Toyotas up top trying to give Blake Reynolds the push. He's not in a Pro Edge Toyota. You remember the team name. I certainly have not gotten that one down yet. 1099? What's the team name for Blake? It's Jake Scarborough off the bottom of the racetrack. Channel 199 Sim Racing for Blake Reynolds. Fody jumps up in front of him. Dusty Dewar down on the bottom of the racetrack as Scarborough trying to get back accordion with this field. Dustin Dewar with the big push from Ryan Gable. Matthew Weeks now down on the bottom. As here comes Fody with the push from Reynolds, Lytle, and Wadsworth up top.
14 laps to go. Dustin Dewar leading the way, but there's Tyler Fody with the push from Blake Reynolds on the outside trying to get out front. Ryan Gable behind Dustin Dewar. Man, And we haven't talked about him a whole lot tonight, but there's Tate Lytle at the end of the race.
Tate got that big lead from that one wreck that didn't happen. Now he's back behind the bumper, the rear bumper of Tyler Fode. Gives him the big shot going into turn 3. I think that was a lesson learned for Blake Reynolds right there. Tate Lytle and Tyler Fode have drafted together for years. Tate's always going to choose that 40 car over someone he's not super sure of in that Blake Reynolds machine. But right now it's working out for that bottom lane. Big push from Dusty Dewar to the back bumper of Blake Reynolds. Tate Lytle unable to get that outside lane going with Tyler Fode up top.
So now for Dustin
Adams
Dewar,
in the wall.
Oh, yes. Yeah, that was Josh Adams getting a piece of the wall, but keeping it going. That stacks up that outside lane behind him. But back up front, yeah, I was about to say, when does Dustin Dewar make the move? It came a little earlier than I was expecting. It didn't really go anywhere. Now Ryan Gable's got to try and jump out front, and he's got help from Ethan Stanley.
Yep. Now Dustin Dewar slowed up. He tries to block off Tate Lytle. That's going to slam the door on the middle lane. Here comes that top. Blake Reynolds, the leader. Ryan Gable second. Ethan Stanley third. Matthew Weeks fourth, but the outside lane stalls up a little bit, and that inside lane starts to surge forward. Dewar, Lytle, Scott Crump on the bottom. And now in the middle lane, it's Chris Wright looking there with help from Tyler Fode, Josh Adams, and Ethan Burrell starting to work his way into the picture.
Down the backstretch they go, 12 laps to go. And this outside lane, now Ryan Gable makes the move. He's got Ethan Stanley in tow, Blake Reynolds all alone. There goes Gable, there goes Stanley, there goes Matthew Weeks, there goes Chris Wright, Tyler Fode, all streaming best. That 66 car.
Single file lane on the bottom of the racetrack. Blake Reynolds falls back all the way to the 9th position. And Dustin Dewar looked for it, he missed it. He gets spun out by Tate Lytle. Dewar onto the apron, Lytle's checked up. The second group of this pack is going to be checked big. I don't think they're checked up quite enough to lose this front pack, but Tate Lytle is certainly going to be lost, as is Dustin Dewar, who got spun out trying to go around the Blake Reynolds machine. And now it's Ethan Stanley and Ryan Gable leading the lanes up front. That second group's going to try and catch back up. I think they will in due time with some big heads of steam that might trigger an incident once they get there. Josh Adams, the one with the big run, pushed by Ethan Burrell, trying to catch up to that outside lane.
Dustin Dewar falling all the way back to 25th with that, but he was the only car involved and kept it on the apron. We stay green. And Ethan Stanley, oh, here comes Chris Wright, but nothing there. And now they're going to be 3 wide behind the leader.
Wright drops to the middle, blocks off Blake Reynolds. Stanley, Gable, and Fode leading each lane. Lake Norman working the lanes. Now Wright with the big push from Reynolds. He shuffles Stanley to the bottom. It's Fode up top with help from David Tooker and Nick Indelicato.
Tyler Fode to the lead. David Tooker behind him. Couple of those drivers with so much success here in the Elite Cup Series. That outside lane surging ahead. It'll be 9 laps to go.
I mentioned him before we got this restart going. Ethan Burrell into 5th in that 37 car, the defending winner of this race. He slices to the bottom in front of Gavin Higgins, the rookie, to try and push his way towards the front of this Daytona 500. Here comes Burrell. Here comes Indelicato down to the middle lane. He'll try to gain a run from his teammate Adams. He can't get it done. Adams slices off Gerald Campbell at the top. Campbell in front of Weeks and Chris Wright as Seth Rawls gets hung in the middle.
Through turns 3 and 4, Ethan Burrell at the head of steam, leading that bottom lane. Gavin Higgins, Ethan Stanley, Scott Crump behind him. Tyler Fode still going to be the leader this time across the line with 8 laps to go. But now Ethan Burrell is up there challenging for the lead.
Yep, Ethan Burrell has made the comeback. He's from 22nd on the restart all the way to the race lead. Now it's Tyler Fode with David Tooker, Burrell's teammate, in that outside lane. Then Nick Indelicato, Josh Adams up there on top with Ethan Stanley and Scott Crump down there on the bottom. Lapped cars are going to drop to the apron in front of this pack, thankfully. Allow these leaders to continue racing. Just 8 laps to go in the Daytona 500.
That was Michael Goodman was that first car, trying to catch who that second lap car is.
Schold.
That might have been Ryan Schold, indeed.
Blake Reynolds to the middle, help from Chad Frankenfield and Matthew Weeks. It stacks up. Scott Crump and Ethan Stanley jump to the middle in front of them. Let's try to surge that line forward, get around Gavin Higgins. Higgins' car gets side drafted. Burrell's going to fall back the outside lane, very strong at this point in the race when you can just side draft another car and slow it down. And this 3-wide gap is proving all it needs for Tyler Fode, David Tooker, and Nick Indelicato up front. They are scooting away right now, but that outside there, that middle and bottom lane can start surging forward at any time, and they'll start right now. Nick Indelicato to the bottom, help from teammate Josh Adams. Fode to block.
Fode with the move to shut off that inside lane. Now remember, 1 week ago into duels, it was Fode on the defensive at the end of that race. It ended in tears. Can it work out this time?
Indelicato race lead, Adams to second. They get the top lane. That's kind of the preferred lane at this point. But the Lake Norman teammates are lined up 1, 2, 3 on the bottom. The push is better for Fode and Stanley. Can Crump clear? No, but I think that's not going to stop Fode and Stanley from moving to the top and trying to block off this big run by the Toyotas.
Well, you said the big run, and then that outside lane kind of got checked up there, a little out of shape with the push. And now that's got, I mean, those teammates all lined up nose to tail on the bottom lane.
Coming down to 5 laps to go in this Daytona 500. 2 by 2 behind the 2 Lake Norman teammates of Tyler Fode and Ethan Stanley up front. Scott Crump, the 3rd Lake Norman teammate, slices to the top in front of Nick Indelicato, and now Tyler Fode will try to get up front. No, he can't get there. Stanley to the top for the race lead. Fode on the bottom, help from Ethan Burrell.
I don't know if that was help or if that was, I want to get around you and I'm not lifting. Now he's trying to keep as much of that run as he can, but just cannot find a way around Tyler Fode. Who's got to drop down in front of Gavin Higgins here? The bottom starting to build back up.
Ryan Gable giving the big push to Gavin Higgins. Gable definitely a pusher that can get things going. Here comes Gavin Higgins, the rookie, help from Gable. Justin Wadsworth also pushing forward. Lake Norman with 5 really good chances to win this Daytona 500 here. Matthew Weeks to the middle of the racetrack. Oh, Higgins sideways off the front bumper of Gable.
Can he keep it safe on the apron?
4 wide. They're wrecking. Adams and Indelicato rolls around. Caution out.
Caution is out. Seth Rawls sliding to a stop outside of turn 2.
That all started from a little bit earlier than even this.
Oh.
Yeah, 4 wide here because Indelicato was in the wall, and then
that was a very, I will say there was contact between, I think that was the 19 and the 22, but that was a very extreme reaction by the 22 car. I would not be surprised if there may have been a little bit of exaggerated netcode contact there.
Yeah, this all started even before this, Dave. If we can get to where Gavin Higgins gets punted by Gable, that's where this all really started, because I think they saw this happen, knew that bottom lane was going to start to check up and tried to take advantage of it. And there was kind of like 3 or 4 folks really punching up the aggression as we hit 4 laps to go here.
Oh, man.
So it's a little after this. It's on the front straightaway there. But yeah, this is where that big push from Gable hit. Keep going forward. Double speed. So we're going to see it right after the start finish line here. Right here. Yeah, right there. Gable gets Higgins sideways. Ultimately, this ends up being kind of a boon for Gavin Higgins. He's going to watch the wreck happen in front of him, hit the brakes, and miss the wreck. They react to that. It ends up spinning out the 22 and 10, and the 77 gets into the 25. 3 shift cars involved in that one. I don't know if any are particularly heavily damaged. I would assume not. Rawls is running. He was probably the heaviest damaged of the 3. I don't see a meatball flag on the Josh Adams machine or the Nick Indelicato machine.
Let's see. Rawls is on pit road. Hanshaw on pit road. Michael Hosek on pit road.
He needed fuel.
He was probably got to take this opportunity to take fuel since he had already kind of fallen back anyway. And of course, some of those guys that were already in pretty wounded situation, like Ryan Schold is back on pit road. I'm sure he had more damage to fix. So is this? Yes, this is going to take us
to overtime.
To our green-white checkered overtime period. So I'll begin my explainer. In Elite, we have 3 attempts at the green-white checker. 3 attempts. Now, with iRacing, I shudder to even discuss iRacing throwing yellows at this point. But, as we discussed during our duels last week, once the white flag is displayed, anything that happens after that cannot bring out a caution. It doesn't matter. Shay could break the rules. Shay Mitchell, our race controller, could break the rules and hammer the throw yellow button as the admin. iRacing will not throw the yellow once the white flag is out. Whatever happens, if they make it to the white flag, it is a race to the checkered flag no matter what. Now, after the first lap, if you get a caution, the caution comes out, we try again. 3 maximum attempts. The white flag, it's a race to the finish.
Yep, eloquently put. And we'll re-rack the field here once things start to get doubled up with 2 to go.
Here, I would think. We'll see if the lights turn out on the pace car here. Survey says, yep.
They do. So here's the rundown as we hit overtime number 1 for the conclusion to the 12th Belly Up Sports Cup Series Daytona 500 presented by Rev Limit Workshop. Tyler Fody leads this race. Ethan Burrell is running second. Ethan Stanley third. Scott Crump fourth. Ryan Gable fifth. The 4 Chevrolets there, all members of the same team, Lake Norman Motorsports. Matthew Weeks runs 6th. Justin Wadsworth 7th. Chris Wright 8th. Blake Reynolds 9th. David Tooker 10th. Ray Bracey is 11th. Gerald Campbell is 12th. Chad Frankenfield is 13th. Leighton Norgard is 14th. Josh Adams, just involved in that wreck, is 15th. He did not go down pit road. Jordan Owens is 16th. Gavin Higgins is 17th. He thought that caution was well-timed. So did Tate Lytle in 18th. Johnny Thomas will restart 19th. Brent Jones will restart in 20th. Also thinking that caution was well-timed was Dusty Dewar. He starts 21st on that one. And then it's Michael Hosack, Zach Rogers, Jake Scarborough, Seth Rawls, and Nick Indelicato to round out this running order to see who wins this race. And I do not exaggerate when I say I went through the entirety of the lead lap because any one of those drivers could very well win this race.
That's the beauty of Daytona, right?
We have seen stranger things happen than a gigantic wreck where 15th comes through to lead the thing. So Ethan Burrell worked his way from 20th up to second in all of 5 laps there. So I feel very strongly the winner comes from the lead lap here, but that's about it. That's all I know here.
The virtual sun setting behind turn 4, the sun about to set on the 12th running of the Rev Limit Workshop Daytona 500.
Tyler Fody, the race leader, he's got 3 Lake Norman Chevrolets directly behind him. Green flag is back out. Fody on the loud pedal. He has got the help from Stanley, from Gable, from Wadsworth. What can Ethan Burrell and those Pro Edge Toyotas do to counter this? This is a really strong move by these Lake Norman Toyotas, but the way this package has been going, it may not matter.
Field bunched up nose to tail, looking for 3 wide on the backstretch. Gerald Campbell, first one in line on the far outside at the moment, but nobody's there with him and he can't get back in line.
Lake Norman has the first 3 slots all singled out. Gable pushing the pusher right now. Stanley bump drafting Fody. They're through turn 3. They're headed for the white flag. If we get it, that's it. The race would end the next flag. And we've got it. White flag is out at Daytona.
And right now it's a 5-car breakaway out front. But is somebody from this second pack going to be able to close the gap? Right now, Fody Stanley, Gable, Wadsworth, Reynolds as they make their way out of turn 2, but keep an eye on this second pack.
Yep, second pack has two pairs of teammates there on that top groove and bottom groove trying to gain a run. Blake Reynolds looking to see which one is going to be able to take it. Here comes Stanley to the top. Help from Gable. They're rocking around Tyler Fody. They all get into the wall. Bracey gets into Fody. It's Ethan Stanley off turn 4. Stanley and Gable make contact. Here they come to the line. It'll be Ethan Stanley winning the Daytona 500.
Oh, Ethan Stanley scoring the victory in the 12th running of the Daytona 500. The first time Ethan Stanley has scored the victory in this event.
Lost my mind there for a second. I did not think the Lake Norman guys were going to pull out that early on Tyler Fody. When he did that, I mean, Fody was a sit and duck, but every single car in the top 5 hit the wall going into turn 3. I do not know why they did that. I really do not. The first two make sense, but then Reynolds just drives it up into the fence. Burrell drives it up into the fence. He gets spun out. Man.
And then here, Reynolds has the gap, but Gable kind of comes up the hill a little bit. Now they're bouncing off each other like it's 2003 at Darlington. That opens the door for David Hooker with the run on the outside, and he had the fastest car when they crossed the lane. He just ran out of time.
Yeah, it's, I mean, it all went chaotic there at the end, but at least we got us some good racing. Ethan Stanley locks his ticket into the playoffs. Not, I don't think, going to be a surprise, but...
Oh, boy, I was really concerned about that for him.
Yeah, I know. He picks up the win here at Daytona. Wadsworth second, Hooker third. Wadsworth defending champion, picking up that second place finish. Lake Norman Motorsports picking up the 1-2 on the podium with the Pro Edge Toyota of Hooker third, then Gable fourth, Blake Reynolds fifth. In this
14th career Elite Cup Series win for Ethan Stanley. You're not going to find a bigger one.
Yep, that was the big one. And ultimately, it all goes downhill for Ethan Burrell. Most of all, in that final lap, he drops from in the top 5 back to the 24th finishing position. So here's a look at your final running order. Might be a little tough to read there on the white sky, but I'll fill you in. Ethan Stanley, Justin Wadsworth, Hooker, as we've mentioned, then Ryan Gable, Blake Reynolds, Tate Lytle, Jordan Owens, Ray Bracey, Alayton Norgard, and Tyler Fody round out your top 10. So, Zach, should we do some interviews?
I'd love to. There's only one problem.
They have not arrived in the interview booth.
No.
I wonder if David Hooker is even online. No, he is. All right. Well, we're waiting for interviews. Hopefully those guys, whoever comes to the waiting room first, will interview you. The only one we're required to interview is Stanley.
Since 2010, race fans have had one burning question. When will the Xfinity Series return to Worldwide Technology Raceway? You asked, NASCAR delivered. On Saturday, September 6, 2025, the magic is back. The track that launched the legendary careers of Harvick, Busch, Keselowski, Edwards, and Earnhardt Jr. is now ready to write that next chapter. We're going to introduce you to a new crop of future champions and Hall of Famers. And in the process, we'll create more of the greatest moments in racing history. NASCAR Weekend 2025, the NASCAR Cup Series Championship Playoffs, the Confluence Music Festival, and now 250 miles of the NASCAR Xfinity Series. 2 incredible races, 1 challenging track, a 3-day party of epic proportions. Go to www.raceway.com and lock in your weekend racing and camping packages for as little as $20 down.
Welcome back. The running order is going to end up getting a little bit of a revision later on due to some potential penalties there on the last lap. But let's interview P3 David Hooker. And David, a long race, a very eventful race, results in you going from dead last on the starting grid to P3. Take me through your night.
Oh man, that was crazy. I mean, to be fair, iRacing there was a lot of issues within our race that we couldn't really control, and really felt like that hindered the quality of the race. But I mean, Shay did with our race control did a great job all night long with just trying to keep a level head with everything that was going on. I mean, there was multiple wrecks where I felt like even with me being in the lead pack, I still felt like there should have been a caution at least a few times. Like there was one lap going through the tri oval where we had a car perpendicular to the racing surface facing the leaders at the start finish line. So I don't know what's going on with these caution triggers in iRacing, but that definitely needs to be looked at. But I mean, other than that, I mean, I feel like we put on a good show for the end of the race for sure. I mean, started as far as I could towards the back of the field, and really just made it my goal is just take advantage of the calmness in the beginning and try to get myself at least in the top 10 before maybe stage points, or even if a caution comes out, I'm still ahead of the mid pack, which is definitely the danger zone. You guys know that, but no, I coming out of or going into 3, I did not feel like I was gonna be having an interview with you guys. I think I was sitting maybe 10th or 12th entering 3, and then everything kind of just got bottled up, and I aimed for the middle with Tate, and I don't know if you guys caught it on the replay, but I just pretty much aimed for the middle and didn't lift, and made it all the way through, got up next to Wadsworth. Couldn't get second, but I mean, just happy to have finally avoided the wreck. I feel like I always get caught up in it, and this time I finally avoided it. So very happy with the 3rd place, and looking forward to the rest of the season, and glad we could start it on a strong one as well.
Of course, you know, the Daytona 500 is such a huge deal, but like you say, starting off the season on a high note, how much does it help when you look at the big picture, the points, trying to make the playoffs at the end of the season, to not start off with a really low number in the points standings out of Daytona?
I mean, Zach, believe it or not, you know it when you get those good finishes. I mean, that carries momentum for the rest of the season. You know, I mean, the mile and a half, that's what our league base is based on. So, I mean, I'm pretty decent at the mile and a half, but when we come to those road courses or the plate tracks, that's where, for me, the big points gains are. Is definitely in the plate tracks, and I try to take advantage of just those being aggressive and trying to lead the race as much as I can. And once I've took on that approach at these plate tracks and noticed my finishes started going up, and just taking the experience that I have and knowing how important every single point is. I've been on both sides of point in and point out, and starting off the season with a good points gap is only something to build on for me, and hopefully we can keep these top 5s and top 10s going. That's really what we need for later in the year. That's where my focus is. Last year I kind of let myself down, but I think this year I'm going to be coming out as strong as I can, and hopefully we can keep these good finishes up.
Well, David, you know, congratulations on the good finish, obviously. And do you have any shout outs for us here before we send you off tonight?
Yeah, all of Pro Edge Racing. I mean, the amount of effort that everybody put in tonight to, I mean, it felt like tonight it was kind of just everybody against for themselves, really. I mean, I was starting at the back, Ethan was up at the front, Weeks and Tate were somewhere in the middle, so it was kind of all scattered along. We didn't really have many friends to work with when it mattered. At least I didn't. I got pretty lucky with finding Tate at the end of there, and he chose me of all the cars to follow and push through, so I appreciate him for that. And didn't really get to work with each other until like we couldn't work with each other. I mean, towards the end of the race, it got down to just pick your lane and pick your partner, and that's who you're going to be working with. And you know, it worked out for us no matter, like, regardless. Well, I'm happy with. A few of us got caught up in that. Unfortunately, Ethan got wrecked in that. I think Winks might have caught up some damage, but overall, very, very happy for the team. Everybody on the elite side, Chad, I mean, he puts up with a lot. We were kind of screaming at him mid-race because of everything that was going on, but it's just something we got to look into as a league and know that we can work around this and make it better and have better and consistent races from now on, at least at these plate tracks. So everybody involved in elite, all of our drivers, relatively good race. Even with the chaotic ending, we still had a good shot at it. Made it all the way to the white on one green white, so that's pretty awesome. Also, everybody up in the booth, all you guys, all your work. David, your mic sounds great. I love it. I'm looking forward to the rest of the season. That's going to be so awesome. I love hearing the quality of the stream step up in here every single time we start up a new season. So really thankful for what you guys are doing up here, as well as Belly Up Sports, Worldwide Technology Raceway, Blue Egg Marketing, 4D Racewear, JD Designs. How could I forget John? I mean, John painted this beautiful car, and I'm working on another one for later in the season, but a great friend of mine for 12 plus years now, and if you're looking for a beautiful paint scheme like this one, of any color, any kind, definitely hit up John. He's your man. But that's all I have to say. Hopefully you guys had a good time up in the booth and enjoyed the race.
Thanks, David. We appreciate it, buddy. And good luck the rest of the season, man.
Alrighty, thank you.
It's David Tooker. Let's grab second place finisher Justin Wadsworth and defending champion Justin Wadsworth. And Justin, a bit of a wild one there for you, but you wind up coming home P2. Take me through your night a little bit, and then what else could you maybe have done there on that last lap? It seemed like you guys were just trying to make sure one of your team cars came home with the win.
Man, first of all, it's good to hear your voice after a long race like that and still be in it. But yeah, I mean, the start of the race, I just kind of tried to take it easy. I ran up a little bit up front, maybe top 10, kind of keeping those stage points in the back of my mind, but got shuffled back. So I figured I'd just hang out there for the first stage. And then the race kind of came to me. We had those crashes that didn't have cautions, and I was lucky enough to be on the front half of that and just stay with that lead pack. And yeah, I mean, that last restart, the four of us hooked up Lake Norman, and it was pretty much our race from there, I think.
And then, thinking about going forward, obviously you're, the defending champion of this series. You've got, the playoffs to think about, and with a really strong start to the season, I'm pretty sure you went ahead and got some stage points in there. But even if not, I mean, a P2 to start the season is a really good way to begin your title defense. What are you looking forward to with regards to, working your way back into the playoffs this season?
Honestly, I kind of always look just forwards past Daytona. Everybody kind of comes in here to win. You don't really think too much about the points. I mean, obviously, I'm super happy to come home with what I did. I got some stage points at stage 2, I think, and then the finish second. But yeah, I mean, honestly, the key for me last year was just being consistent. Maybe I wasn't winning every race, but it's always top 5, top 10, staying up there, getting the points every week, and that's just what I'm going to focus on this season, just staying up there and staying quiet, but then kind of coming through at the end there, turning it on for the playoffs.
Any thoughts for Justin there, Zach, or should I give him the shout outs?
Go ahead.
Any shout outs for you, Justin?
Yeah, shout out to my dad. He watched the whole race. I know it's a long one. Shout out to him. Shout out to my girlfriend, Jill. She's watching it as well. And then shout out to the sponsor I chose for this year. It's St. Jude's. I figured, I'd do a charity sponsor, and then whatever my winnings are for this season, I would go ahead and donate it. I thought that'd be a cool thing to do since I didn't have a sponsor coming into the season. So yeah, and then shout out to you guys. I think you guys just do such an awesome job in the booth. Chad as well for putting everything on. I know it can be a headache sometimes with all the different personalities, but I had a lot of fun tonight, and I'm looking forward to next week.
We appreciate it, Justin. And is it for sure a donation to St. Jude that just of your winnings, or what's the deal on that? Because we want to clear it up just in case anybody wants to match you.
That's really cool. Actually, John painted my car, and he told me just to do it for free, and then what I was going to send him, I'm going to donate it. So, I mean, I could throw a PayPal in there or something like that. But, yeah, I just, like I said, all my winnings, and then maybe if anybody else wants to give in, I think that'd be really cool. It's a great cause. So, yeah.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate it, Justin. Have a great night, and congrats on the P2, buddy.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Justin Wadsworth, and let's grab the winner of the 12th Belly Up Sports Cup Series Daytona 500, Ethan Stanley. And Ethan, you've won a lot of races in this league, especially in the last couple of seasons, but I mean, this is rather easily the biggest one you've won. Take me through your night, but you seem to be right up front just about all night long.
Yeah, the first stage, up until we all got separated at that one point. So running up front pretty well. just kind of hanging out. And then ended up about like 20 seconds behind the lead pack or something. And just had to work with Burrell the whole time to try to get back. And luckily, got the caution. And that kind of shook up the field, and I was able to kind of make my way to the front.
How hard was it with everything going on in this race to kind of keep a level head and be mentally in the right place when the cards finally settled out to give you those late race restarts?
You just can't worry about it too much. You got to think any point up to like 10 to go that you got a pretty good chance at getting a caution and restacking the field. Just gotta keep running, and that's what this race is. It's a lot of patience, and just being there at the last minute.
So you're telling me that a lot of bluster for nothing tonight in terms of all the talk. I mean, was that bothersome to you, or were you just kind of going with the flow there?
I was just kind of going with the flow. Of course, I was a little bit upset we didn't get any yellows during that period, but overall, you just got to keep your head down. That's the way this race has been like every season for me. I've ended up like way back, and I got to catch back to the pack eventually. So kind of used to it.
All right, well, Ethan, any shout outs or thank yous for us here before we send you off to celebrate your Daytona 500 championship, buddy?
Yeah, big shout out to Bleg Marketing for being on the car always. JD Designs for making all these beautiful paints. Honestly, a shame what happened to John. I tried to dodge a car and he kind of followed me into it. And big shout out to you guys up in the booth, always putting on a great product every week. And big shout out to Chad and Che for having to deal with all this tonight. And just thanks.
Awesome. Well, shout out to you, Ethan, for taking home the Daytona 500 win. And, we'll see you in the playoffs. Good luck.
Yeah, thanks.
And that will conclude what was a very eventful Daytona 500 there, Zach.
Boy, it was, but I think Ethan Stanley hit the nail on the head and kind of what I touched on a little bit. Even when, with everything that was going on, at some point it comes down to who can keep their focus, keep their head down, and get to the checkered flag. And that's what Ethan Stanley did tonight with put himself in position at the end of the race, made the right moves on that final restart, and now he joins the list of winners in the Elite Belly Up Sports Cup Series Daytona 500, punches his ticket into the postseason. And man, we get to come back next week, go to Kentucky for the 200th Elite Belly Up Sports Cup Series race in series history.
Yeah, that's exciting. We'll definitely touch on that more next week and give it its time in the sun so as to not take away from tonight's race. But what a result there for the 12th Daytona 500. I mean, that finish was pretty extraordinary. Got a guys going for it, Ryan Gable going for it, and Tyler Fody going for it, and just a whole lot of chaos. I'm sure you'll see an updated race results page later when that gets posted. There were some guys passing below the yellow line there that may adjust the running order after the fact. So we'll wait on officially announcing that, but you can see what the unofficial results are there on your screen if you want to pause and look back at that. But that should close out our broadcast, and we will see you from Kentucky next Wednesday night. For David Huckleberry, Zach Evans, and David Westergreen, this has been the 12th Belly Up Sports Cup Series Daytona 500 presented by Rev Limit Workshop, and we will catch you guys next week.